Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know. It's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? A long man who brings a job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed? It's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you'll cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's over too. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth, the only one. We have third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 28th of April, 2024. We have come to the end of April already. It is amazing. I know that for those of you who are with us on a regular basis, this is exceptionally boring to you, that I do this seemingly every program, but it just, I don't know, man. I just can't get over how time flies, how quickly this year is going. We are almost, we're just 2 short days from 4 full months in the books. The first, third of the year already gone. I can't even fathom it. If I am a little off tonight, I want to explain something very odd is going on with my computer. The main computer from which that I run everything and broadcast is running behind. So I am, instead of seeing myself in real time as I normally do, I am seeing myself about 3 to 5 seconds behind. And then on the 2 devices that I'm monitoring, I'm seeing myself maybe anywhere from 10 to as much as 17 seconds behind. And it is very disconcerting, and I have no idea why it's happening. I don't know if I'm just running out of bandwidth or what is going on. And then also, what is also happening is that so I have a very old iPad. It is probably 18 years old now. It is the very first generation iPad Pro, the big one, like 14-inch. And I normally use that to watch the Facebook feed and look for your comments. I can't seem to see your comments. I can't seem to get to a point where there's comments. So what I'm probably going to have to do is switch the two and watch the Facebook on the phone. And do the YouTube on the iPad. So it's, you know what? It's a little bit of a technical thing today, but hey, we will get through it. These are first world problems. You know, at worst, these are first world problems. So, you know, I think we can get through it. That said, let me welcome each and every single one of you. We're so very, very thrilled that you are here. Before I was stopped by Facebook yet again in my sharing process, we made it out to, I think, 95 places. We'll have to get to the rest of you after about an hour. After an hour or so. So that is what we will do. So I hope that you will be patient with us there. Wherever you might be, of course, across the Facebook universe, whatever your corner of the Facebook universe is. And I, as you know, I do continue to believe that it is yours. You created it, you made the space, you named it, all of it. So wherever you are, including your corner of the Facebook universe, let me say hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And it means a lot to us. We're so thrilled. Stay right where you are. If you are on any of the 95 plus places, I think it's 95, that we have shared the program so far, stay right there. Enjoy. Listen, yell back at me, scream, agree, disagree. I closed some other programs and now it seems to have caught up. Interesting. I must be using much more memory of this machine than I thought I was using. Stay right where you are. Enjoy. It's great. I will do my absolute best to keep up with your comments and questions. If they should be coming, something is under my desk. It's very strange. This room is a mess. If I ever turn this camera around, you'd be repulsed at how bad this room is. Stay right where you are. If you have comments, questions, I will do my absolute best to keep up with them and to answer you. However, if you would like to come to my personal Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, it's right there, bottom left-hand corner. Find me. I will see your comments in real time. Very nice gentleman has asked if we'll be having call-ins. We will later in the program. Not yet. I'm waiting on our guest. But we will do call-in later in the program. Thank you very, very much for being a part of the program and for wanting to call in. It's refreshing. I love talking to Randall each week. If Randall teaches you nothing else, it should be that calling into this program, easy for me to say, calling into the program is very, very simple, painless, doesn't hurt a bit. You know, so a very nice gentleman whose name I do not recognize, so I believe he's new, which I appreciate very, very much, asking if he can call in. Of course you can, just a little bit later. We're waiting on our guest to come in any minute. So again, wherever you are on Facebook, you can stay, continue to watch, enjoy the program. If you would like to interact with me live in real time, go to our YouTube channel, which is called That Other Side of Information. A like and subscribe would be brilliant. We appreciate that very much if you wish, if you so see yourself fit to do so. Or you can come to my personal Facebook, Jeff Kennedy. We can interact in real time. We are live in both places. We are live on my Facebook. our Facebook group, That Other Side of Information, and our YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. And, it has occurred to me as I've been reading live promotions to you about hot101.net is the very, very strange revelation that I came to a few months ago, and I have no idea, having been a part of hot101.net now for almost 5 full years, that this never occurred to me. Hot101.net is one of the originators of internet radio that I've told you before, but for just about every other kind of app on the planet, you need to register for it. You got to give them an email address, maybe some biographical information, your credit card, something, and you have to create an account, which basically is just information collecting that they then take and sell and market and so on. Not hot101.net. When you type in hot101.net, go to our main web address, go to our main website, it populates and you're listening, period. Very simple. No phone numbers, no email addresses, no logins, no create an account, none of that. But you can also reach us through our apps. If you have an Apple device, go to the Apple App Store, search hot101.net. You will find our app there. If you have an Android device, go to the Google Play Store, search for hot101.net. You will find our app there. If you have any other type of streaming device, a Fire tablet, I don't think those are Android, LG phone, Motorola phone, Google phone, etc. I don't think those are Android either. Tune in radio app is what you need. Go to the search bar and search for, go up to the search bar and type in hot101.net, and you can listen to us through the Tune In radio app. Again, no emails, no credit cards, no money, no blood sample. Don't have to give up your firstborn, all that fun stuff. You can just open up the apps and listen to hot101.net. Or, of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, and she will. Because we work there as well. We're also part of the TCP Media Group from Lancaster, PA, and proud, damn proud, to be part of it. Quick programming note for you. We will, in all likelihood, not be with you next week. I am welcoming people, and I'm doing a darn terrible job of it. We will, in all likelihood, not be with you next week, May 5th, and we will, in all likelihood, not be with you on May 12th. Let me explain why. I'm still not 100% on what we're going to do May 5th, but I'm leaning toward not being here. 1 week from today is May 5th, and it is the day that Kristen and I will be formally welcomed, sworn in, joined to Central Moravian Church here in Bethlehem. We have been, no pun intended, we have been blessed enough to find a faith home. And I've actually, if you've been with me on this program and this journey, that is this program, you'll know that I have, in recent years, I would say, and certainly much more so in the last year or so, kind of been finding myself gravitating back toward faith. And not necessarily religion. And I do sometimes think that that those two things are different. But I have been finding myself drifting back toward faith and finding a faith home. Well, we were lucky enough to do exactly that. And that would be Central Moravian Church here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, the home of the Moravian Church here in North America. And we've been welcomed just so simply and easily. And so next Sunday will be the day that we are actually formally, I don't want to say sworn in, because it makes it sound like we've been elected to something, and it's not really the case. I guess I'm groping for the right word, kind of really stretching, reaching for the right word. It's not coming to me, but we'll be formally, and I don't even want to say accepted, because it almost makes it sound like we're going to go through some kind of hazing process, which couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, it just could not be further from the truth. We've been we've been so welcomed with unequivocally and without any hesitation. I should think not that we were giving anybody any reason for hesitation, but we've been so welcomed. But we formally go through the ceremony, I guess, if you will, to become full members of the church, and that will be taking place next Sunday. And I believe there's some fun and frivolity following that. And I just have a feeling that by the time this day wraps up, or that day wraps up, I'm not going to quite be too terribly energetic to come here and be with you for 3 hours. The following Sunday, May 12th, is Mother's Day. We have never been with you on a Mother's Day because you should be with mom. And if mom isn't with you anymore, then be with grandma. And if grandma's not with us anymore, then remember them. Then celebrate yourselves and remember them. If you are a mom, if you have a, well, we all have a mom. If you have a mom, if you have a grandmother, a godmother, aunt, whoever it is in your life that may fill that role, spend time with them. You don't need to come here and listen to me preach at you and talk at you, and even during the great parts of the program where we're talking to each other, either through comment, question, or on the phone. You don't need that. Not on a Mother's Day. We have never, to my memory, I don't believe that, maybe the very first year when we started, I might have done it, but generally speaking, we don't do Mother's Day. We don't do Father's Day. We don't do holiday weekends. We won't be here Memorial Day. It's going to be a very slow, we're not going to be with you for much of May, is what I'm trying to say in a very, very bad way. We will not be here on this. My plan is, in all likelihood, we will not be here on the 5th. We will not be here on the 12th. We will be here on the 19th, and then the 26th is Memorial Day. So it's going to be a really light May for me being with you. But I assure you, they're all for good reasons. And at least I think they're for good reasons. One being a national holiday, one being Mother's Day. Spend the day with mom. Or, like I said, grandma, aunt, godmother, whoever fills that role for you. Or, if you're a parent who's already lost those folks and your partner is the mom, then spend the day with them. But in all likelihood, somebody in your nearby circle, if you will, fills that role. You should spend the day with them. So I'm not planning to be here on the 5th, and the 12th is Mother's Day. So there's a very, very strong possibility that we won't see each other for a few weeks, but I think it's for very good reason. These are national holidays and days that you should just be unplugged, and spending it with family are excellent reasons. So I hope you will respect that for us, and remember to come back when we come back on the 19th. As I said, I suppose there's still a small possibility I'll be with you next week, but I'm kind of doubting it. I think we'll be up at the church and in Center City, Bethlehem, for probably the entire day. And I just don't think I'll be here to rush back and get back to you, but I hope you'll understand. Normally you always do. We have a very, very loyal and forgiving audience, and I think my cat, either a wire was kind of tickling me in the leg, or my cat is here. I'm not sure. He's not happy with me today. The cat, by the way, has a cut on his chin that just won't heal. We have been trying desperately to get antibiotics into him, and so I got some in like a new form yesterday. I picked up pills, I crushed them, I put them in his food. He doesn't like the taste, so he's refusing to eat. Well, little does he know, he's going to eat. Whether he likes it or not, he's going to eat, because eventually he's going to get too hungry and he's going to want to eat, so he'll eat. But he was up here earlier as we were doing our show prep and kind of giving me the business a little bit. Wasn't yapping at me so much as he was kind of stalking me, like, when are you going to feed me, even though your bowl, sir, is I'm pretty sure he's your bowl, sir, is full. You just are being stubborn because you don't like the taste of the antibiotics, even though, by the way, I think they're beef flavored. He has eaten them before. I'm also extremely thirsty and dehydrated, and I have no idea why that is either. But anyway, that's the welcome part of the program. That's the program information that we have for you coming up for the next couple weeks. So let's get into the program, shall we? Now we do have a guest scheduled for today, Lix Mikitarian, whom I believe is making her third appearance on the program, to discuss everything that's new in the world of Moms for Liberty. Now, Liz, of course, is the founder of the national group Stop Moms for Liberty. And of course, if you are the head of the group that is whose sole purpose was to stop another group, you pretty much know everything about that group. So Liz is coming back here to catch us up on the goings on of Moms for Liberty. And she'll be with us whenever she can pop in. It's a Sunday, folks. I mean, I think she was trying to have dinner with the family first and so on. She's on the East Coast as we are. She's in Florida, but she's in the Eastern time zone. So I believe she was trying to have some dinner with family and get everybody squared away before joining us, and that's fine. So whenever she pops in, we'll get to that discussion. We do have a guest scheduled, and that is Lix Mikitarian. We'll get to the discussion with her when she pops in. Until that point, let me hit on a couple of topics from this past week. And you'll notice me grasping for air and sniffling a bit too. Well, it's summer today here in Lehigh Valley. It was 80. I'll have a look. It's 80 something, or at least when we were driving back. Well, it's 79 now. It feels like 81. I believe the high temp for the day was 81 or 82. And then for the next couple of days, tomorrow it's supposed to get close to 90, Tuesday 84, 76, 81, 78. And then, of course, ironically, next weekend is going to be miserable weather, apparently. Of course, on the weekend, it's got to be terrible. That said, it's very warm in here. I do have a fan going. But of course, with these summer temperatures, the here comes, well, pollen in the Lehigh Valley has been off the charts. It's just been off the charts. And that's been rough to deal with. But with the good weather comes the pollen. And today it seems to be bothering me as so far as I'm stuffed up. I should have done something to clear myself up before we went live with you. The less I can breathe through my nose, the more I have to breathe through my mouth. And then I'm talking the whole damn time because I don't shut up. And it's been a day. It's a gorgeous day. It feels great. Gosh, the warm weather feels so good. The sun feels good. There's a breeze and it's warm and refreshing. And it's actually quite dry out for being so warm. It's really, really lovely day. But the pollen is pretty rough. It's a bad allergy day. It really is. But that's life here in Lehigh Valley. Again, these are first world problems. If you have a roof over your head, if you have food, if you have family, then the fact that you might have the sniffles, if that's the worst thing that happens to you in a day, then you're probably not doing so bad. Let's get to a couple of the big stories of the week. You can see me itching my eyes because my eyes are itching from my allergies as well. And I think the biggest story this week really is, and I almost hate it. I mean, I really, really hate to even. Well, you know what? I'm going to back up for a second because there is something that I wanted to remember to share with you, and that I wanted to point you toward. One of my vices, one of the things that I really spend money on that I probably should not spend money on. It's probably one of the lesser justifiable things that I spend money on is Sirius XM satellite radio. I don't really listen to terrestrial radio at all. Um, and even when I do listen to terrestrial radio stations, I tend to stream them because I'm listening to them from New York City and their signal doesn't reach where I live. So I kind of count that a little bit as listening to terrestrial radio. I guess it kind of is listening to terrestrial radio, even though I stream it. But in the car, predominantly, if not exclusively, it's Sirius XM. Among the shows that I will take in bits when I'm in the car is Howard Stern. And on Thursday or Friday, um, he had President Biden on his program. President was in New York City, and he literally dropped. I guess he was in the Sirius building. I don't know who else he was doing an interview with, but dropped into the Howard Stern show and did a quick 20-minute with Howard, unannounced, unplanned, as I understand it. And I would say to you, if you have a chance to listen to it, you should listen to it. And why should you listen to it? Maybe you're a fan of Mr. Stern, maybe you're not. And goodness knows you can feel any way about it that you wish. Maybe you didn't like the way he was back in the day. He has become an exceptionally gifted interviewer. He tends to get things out of people that they don't, I wouldn't say that they don't want to talk about, but maybe that they weren't planning to talk about, or perhaps that they were not planning to elaborate on. But he has become a truly, truly gifted interviewer. His interview with Bruce Springsteen was nominated for an Emmy. He's done several really, really illuminating interviews with Paul McCartney. He just did an interview a few months back with Barbara Streisand on, the release of her memoir. That was really, really, it was breathtaking. And the interview with President Biden, albeit brief, because if you've listened to Howard at all, some of these interviews last hours, plural. I think the Springsteen one, I think, was 2.5 hours. Not much, not dissimilar from a Springsteen concert itself. So this was only, I think, 15, 20 minutes max. But I strongly, strongly encourage you to check it out if you can find it. If you're not a SiriusXM subscriber, there are probably clips of it on YouTube. If you know somebody who can give you a login or something like that, or use the app, the SiriusXM app, you can get the interview on demand. I really do think you should check it out. And here's why. For me, the interview was terribly non-political. It focused an awful lot on the actual human life, if you will, the non-political life of the president, his history, having lost his first wife and daughter, getting remarried, raising his sons, losing his son, his early work as a defense attorney, as a public defender. They did talk about Trump a little bit, but the differences between them, which are obvious and vast. But he did spend an awful lot of time on the human being that is Joe Biden. And I found it to be an exceptionally illuminating. I don't necessarily think it was things that I didn't know, but to hear him explain some of these answers within that context made it new to me. And I guess it's hard to explain. It's not like I didn't know it, but it sounded new. And I just think you should hear it because I really do think it's quite extraordinary. Look, you could disagree with President Biden on policy issues. There are policy issues I disagree with him on. I'm absolutely gobsmacked at the fact that Louis DeJoy is still running the post office, or that Trump's nominee and eventual pick to run the Social Security Administration is still in place. But some 4 years later, he's still, well, 3.5. He's still there. It's insane. Or I should say 3.5 after President Biden was sworn in. He was been there longer, of course. I'm gobsmacked by the fact that these people are still in place. But so rather than the interview being terribly, terribly deep and wonky into policy and campaigning and so on and so on and so on, it was very, very human. And I think that what you'll take away from it, and if you don't take this away from it, that's fine too. But I think what you'll take away from it is that whatever you might think of Joe Biden on a on a policy level, or whatever you might think of him as a president, I think it's damn near impossible not to take him as a truly good and decent man, as a good and decent human being, as someone who cares for other, who genuinely cares for other people. And that's no small thing, really. That's no small thing. We could use a hell of a lot more of that in our politics. Decent people. I'm reminded of there's an audio clip of an interview with Lindsey Graham, senior senator from South Carolina, who, of course, after trying to run for president himself in 2016 and warned everyone that Trump was a thief and a criminal and a crook and a liar and a shyster and a carnival barker, and he used, some other colorful language. And then, of course, turning into among the greatest of the Trump apologists. It's Graham himself that said that Joe Biden is one of the truly decent men in the Senate and that's ever served in the federal government. And that if you don't like Joe Biden, the problem is probably with you, not with him. And that he can be trusted. That when he tells you he's going to do something, he's going to do it. If he tells you he can't do something, he's going to tell you he can't. If he agrees with you, he'll tell you. If he doesn't, he'll tell you. And it's an audio clip that is very, very illuminating. And it is the truth. It's one of those rare times when the truth slipped out of Senator Graham's face. But the interview with Howard Stern is exceptionally illuminating. I think it's very touching. It's very emotional. And I think you should check it out by whatever means you can possibly get it. Again, if you can only get clips of it through YouTube, please check it out. I think you will really enjoy it. And again, keeping in mind that, we're all individuals. We all have our feelings and preferences and policy positions and so on. If you can take the interview in almost a non-policy political way and just try to listen to the man speaking to Howard Stern, and then you're listening in, I think it's an interview on a very different level. And I'm truly not certain how anyone could come away with that not thinking to themselves that this is a really, really decent man, truly, truly decent to his core. And so I hope you'll check that out. And I'd be curious if you are able to check it out, if you will have the same reaction to it as I did, because I found it, I listened to it, I think, twice on Saturday while I was in the car making a bit of a road trip. I listened to the entire thing twice from start to finish. So I think because they were running it on a loop, which is interesting. So check it out. Let me know what you think of that. 6:35, halfway through our first hour. Our guest has joined us. This is the Kennedy Effect, live with you for the 28th of April. I almost said February, and I have no idea why I almost did that. My brain, February popped into my brain. I'm wrong by a solid 2 months. It is the 28th of April, 2024. A beautiful summer's day here in the Lehigh Valley. We're so thrilled that you're with us wherever you are in your corner of the Facebook universe. Thank you for allowing us to be part of it. We appreciate it very, very, very much. We couldn't do it without you. To every single individual who shares our program and allows it to be on your little piece of Facebook, you're to all the groups, small, large, public, private, local, regional, national, global, the pages, everybody that allows us to be part of your corner of Facebook. Thank you very, very much. We've shared the program to just under 100 places so far. When my temporary ban from sharing lifts in about another half hour or so, we'll get to the rest of you. But we are live on our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, live on my own Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, and of course, our YouTube channel, which is also called That Other Side of Information. It's a great place to watch. It's also the best place to catch all of our programs in a recorded form. Our whole library of programs are right there. YouTube.com/That Other Side of Information. Hot101.net. Our name is our web address, the global internet radio station, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, below, on, or above Earth. If you can connect to the internet, you can listen to Hot101.net. Desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, Bluetooth it in the car, speakers, headphones, earbuds. Tell Alexa to play Hot101.net. No login not personality, no login, no profile, no nothing needed. You open up the apps and you're listening. It's that simple. And you should be doing exactly that. And again, you can tell Alexa play Hot101.net, of course, the TCP Media Group from the Lancaster, PA area. We welcome back to the program for, I think, the third time, if I'm not mistaken, the founder, and she's got cool t-shirts. I don't have one of those cool t-shirts. She's got a cool Stop Moms for Liberty t-shirt. I will be ordering mine. I expect a massive discount, by the way, but I will be ordering mine soon. And that is Lix Mikitarian, live from sunny Florida. I imagine it's 80. I think we hit 82 degrees up here, but I'm guessing you're still a bit warmer. But welcome back to the program, and thank you very, very much for being here. You're still, yep.
There we go. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, welcome back. Thank you so much. And if you wouldn't mind, remind people, who is Lix Mikitarian? What is Stop Moms? And how did you get here to join us again today?
Sure. Well, as Jeff mentioned, I've been on a couple of other times, and I think that a lot of what Jeff has for content on his podcast applies to or is connected to the work that we're doing. Stop Moms for Liberty started in 22 as a direct response to Moms for Liberty, who is the far-right extremist group labeled by Southern Poverty as an anti-government extremist group that truly is the term that they are, a hate group. They try to shy away from that title, but they are. And I was a classroom teacher for many, many years. And it started here in my own county. And so I tried to speak with Moms for Liberty members and try to give a voice of reason for, the things that they were talking about. But they weren't going to have any of that. And they started attacking me instead. And so I thought, is this going on all over the place? And sure enough, I reached out. So the first chapter was born in Brevard County, Florida. And then we went across the state of Florida into many, many subgroups across the state. And then we grew from South Carolina out to, we are in 46 states. I think it was much less the last time I was on. And we're probably nearing into about 25,000 members, active members. And our whole goal is to stop the destruction of public education that is in play across the country, because Moms for Liberty is not a movement of, as they like to say, just moms that are protecting the children. It is a very well-funded attack on public schooling, who is by deep pockets that have been in the privatization movement for quite a few decades, actually. And it is an attack on public schools, and to either get them shut down or to have them so underfunded that everybody's going to start pulling their kids out, which makes it worse and worse and worse. So the ultimate plan of the pockets behind Moms for Liberty as a group is to have a two-tiered society of education. Those that have a complete and well-funded education, whether it be through private school or charter schools or homeschooling. And that's why we have seen vouchers and things of that nature unfold across the country. And so we believe that the majority of Americans believe in a public school system with equal access to everyone, because we know darn well that if it does become a two-tiered system, a lot of us will not be able to participate in that upper level of education, and we'll become really a caste society, starting with our education. So we believe that education has been attacked by the far right side of things, who have an agenda to take over. And education has been attacked because they could filter in more easily, because typically school board elections, school board meetings were not well attended. The elections were, nothing to bring people out of their homes to go and vote for, unfortunately. And so that was the low-hanging fruit. So they went after school boards, and that is their mission, to take over school boards. Unfortunately, in my own county, that is what came to be. So they have a 3 or 4-way vote on most things, and they've done a whole heck of a lot of destruction, and they don't seem to care what the community, talks to them about or says that they can't support. They don't care. It's full steam ahead, and it is making our schools look bad. So that's the premise of Stop Moms for Liberty. Yes, it seems to be a negative name, but it's actually our mission statement: Stop Moms for Liberty. And we believe that we have made an impact. And so their brand has been soiled, because it did start out as, the cute moms go to the microphone and they go and they say, I'm here to protect the children, and I want to protect your children too. And they've moved very far away from that when they have sex scandals and they hire pedophiles, and they're associated with the Proud Boys. So they have really lost that image that they first set out, and that's how they won people over. And we believe that they've lost a heck of a lot of their membership. We know that some chapters have closed down. Others are kind of silent, so we're not really sure what's going on with them. And we've made some movement, of the needle on this. And we're not finished with our work, obviously, but we've seen a downward trajectory on them electing school board members. And we're hoping that that will be, continued and really exaggerated for this coming election, that they have an even lesser impact. Because that's when they really had the impact, was in the fall of 22. They took over a whole lot of school boards across the country. And it's, as I said, and I can testify personally, it's not a good situation when you have a very big imbalance within a school board, and when decisions are all based on things like religious beliefs or, political beliefs. And so we believe that we need to bring some normalcy back. And that's what we're trying to do.
I have mentioned on the program before that I think one of the really smart, I think it's undeniably smart things that the Koch network has done is to take a very business-like approach to purchasing the federal government. They didn't spend $1 billion to flip a Senate race in California. They bought Montana, Idaho, the Dakotas, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, these lesser populated states
Mhm.
where they didn't have to buy the Confederacy. That was already long gone. But as recently as the 90s, South Carolina had two Democratic senators. One just passed away not that long ago. And who was on? Somebody was on Morning Joe talking about Fritz Hollings, the Democratic. Or no, it was actually President Biden with Howard Stern was talking about Fritz Hollings, the Democratic senator from late Democratic senator from South Carolina. So and he served into the 90s. So South Carolina had two Democratic senators in as early as the 90s. These states, the Montanas, Idahos, Wyomings of the world, were Democratic states following the Republican Great Depression. Really, only the old Confederacy remained as static and anti-inclusive as it has always been. It has changed parties back and forth when the Dixiecrats, the Democrats, were the segregationist party, but one of the very, very smart things that they did is they bought the cheap states where a dollar could go that much further.
Yeah.
Where we could buy both senators from Wyoming and Idaho and Montana and North and South Dakota and such state, again, Nebraska, Iowa. I don't have to rattle them all off. And then they
seem like low-hanging fruit too, right? I mean, it's the same
and then they
concept.
moved into some of the bigger states, the Missouris of the world. Missouri was never as deep red of a state as it is now, without significant investment and very, very smart investment by the Kochs. It would seem to me that one of the smart things that Moms for Liberty did, rather than trying a very large commercial enterprise to stop or to I'm going to mix up all my terms. I'm going to get people very confused. To rather than like a ad campaign or something to discredit public schools, they decided they would do it from within. And school board races are pretty cheap to run.
Right.
Relatively speaking, they're pretty cheap.
They used to be. They've changed that narrative.
Somebody could spend, I don't know, $1,000. I think I spent $500 when I got elected to the school board in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. I'm not even sure if I spent $500. It was 30 years ago. I'm not even sure I spent that much, but I bought some signs. I think that was about it. But in the world of campaigning, they are still probably the cheapest races to run. Tell me about the theory behind that, the thought behind that, and I do think we have to be honest about it, that's pretty smart.
I think they're brilliant.
Within, and a lot cheaper to do it than it is to again, buy billboards and go door to door and try and flood the mailboxes with anti-public school propaganda. It's pretty easy. It's a lot easier to do it from within when most people aren't looking and then destroy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that I don't think the brain power is from the founders of Moms for Liberty. The brain power is in the think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, Leadership Institute. This isn't a bunch of moms sitting around a kitchen table anymore. It may have started that way for like a small amount of time in my county, but the minute the Republican Party got their hooks into this concept of, we can get all these parents inflamed and then we can go down this road, because the Republicans have been trying to get privatization for years and years. And so, yes, I think it has been brilliantly strategic. I think that every step that they've made has been very well thought out until they got to book banning. When they went there, more people have flipped on them than from any other issue. Because frankly, there may be people that don't support Black people. There may be people that don't support LGBTQ plus community, right? I mean, that's just the reality. But you can't go after books. So that's their first really big misstep. And the other one, Jeff, is that when bad things happen, like when we uncover that they've hired a pedophile, they don't ever apologize. And I think that's probably part of that whole Republican mantra. And I'm not a Democrat.
As I do.
Yeah, I'm not a Democrat, so this isn't partisan to me, but I have to call out what's happening. And the Republican Party is what made Moms for Liberty take off. That's where we saw from, this little small group that had matching T-shirts. All of a sudden now they were on Steve Bannon's show. They were on Fox News, so I mean, that doesn't happen as a natural grassroots type growth. And I can tell you that for sure, because we haven't had that, fast grassroots growth. Ours has been truly, fighting tooth and nail to get this movement rolling. And now we're rolling. So, yes, I think they have been very strategic, not because the two women that are the front facing are Tina Descovich and Tiffany Justice right now. But they have a third leg, and she's a political strategist. And I mean, that's the skill base that they've been able to pull together, because those that are pulling the strings on this know how to get things done. And they stumbled across this, ooh, we can have this, nice face to our push to privatize. We can have moms. Who's not going to listen to moms? Who's not going to want to protect and save the children? I mean, does anyone want to have pornographic books in a school? Of course not. And they cover up the fact that there are not pornographic books in school by the mere definition of that. And so they've realized that we can use them as the face of this movement for privatization. And we will do that by having them inflame and cause fear throughout the country. So that's what we're seeing unfold. And when the truth comes out, a lot of people say, oh, wait a minute. No, I don't support that then. If they're talking about removing books from school, if they're talking about like removing programming, firing educators, firing librarians, getting rid of superintendents, all of these things are happening across the country. And it is making people pause and say, wait a minute, maybe Moms for Liberty isn't quite what I thought it was. And that's good for our side of things, that they are being exposed for what they are actually up to. And that is about power and control. And the ultimate, the people pushing this, it's about money, because they have realized there's money to be made in educating a student. And I will tell you, if I could be assured that they would totally take over and privatize the system, and every child in America could have a great education, regardless of their zip code, I'd probably be in with, what they wanted to do. But that's the only way to provide, is through a public system that is free of cost for students. But that's not what they want.
No
And
problem.
yeah. And so, I will say that they have had brilliant strategies, brilliant marketing. They've gotten politicians left and right involved. They have, I mean, even last year, year before, last year, and Philadelphia, they had all of the presidential candidates for the Republican nomination at that point. You don't do that as two moms sitting at your kitchen table. That is a very orchestrated approach to what's going on. So yes, I give them full credit. And I wish to God that they had spent that talent and that time on doing something that was good for all students. And they just haven't, because they don't care.
I might be splitting hairs. Free open admission before I even ask the question. I really might be in the minutia of it, splitting hairs. Is this the Republican Party that did this, or is this the Koch network? Because we know that
it's both.
That the Koch network has more permanent employees than both major parties combined. Yep. They cycle through more money than both major parties combined. We also know that during the Trump regime, the Secretary of Education was Betsy DeVos. Her family became billionaires.
Right.
By half of the education system in the state of Michigan. 50% of it is private and for-profit. And that's how they became billionaires. When Republicans completely controlled Michigan, they privatized and profitized the public education system. And that's how the DeVosses became billionaires. So I know that it's splitting hairs a little bit, but I tend to think that the Kochs essentially own the Republican Party at this point. I don't think the Republican Party is a functional political party, as it stands for nothing, but only can tell you what it stands against. Right. So is this, and I do think it's somewhat from an informational standpoint, I do think it's somewhat important to know exactly where this all starts. Is this the Koch network, or is this, and they're dragging the Republicans with them along the way? Or did this start within the actual, what used to be the Republican Party, and then branched out from there?
No, I think the Republican Party, as well as Moms for Liberty, are both tools that are being used. And the Democratic Party, I don't think would step up and become part of all of this that has taken place, right? So they chose sides. I think the beginnings of this were the Betsy DeVos, the Koch brothers, the Heritage Foundation, Hillsdale College in Michigan. There is a whole network. Leonard Leo, I think that's his name. Leo Leonard. I don't know. It's one of those two.
Leonard Leo is the man who received. He doesn't run the Federalist Society, but he,
yes,
for all intent and purpose, is the Federalist Society.
Yes,
And received right at the end of the Trump administration, received $1.6 billion in his pocket to continue to help push these very young, in the judicial sense, 30 people who are in their 30s and early 40s, who are going to be on the federal bench for 30, 40, 50 years.
Right. It's all about control.
Lifetime appointments. Who helped, find these judges for the Republicans to rubber stamp and push through. One of the very underrated things that President Biden has done, by the way, is he's gotten well over 300 federal judges appealed. Right. Goodness Lord, that's not what I meant. Nominated and approved for federal judgeships throughout the country. Sadly, not enough of them are on the Supreme Court, but.
I mean, when you sit down, Jeff, you think, oh my gosh, this is conspiracy talk, right? But I've been involved with children in education for over 30 years now. I lived in Michigan when Betsy DeVos started rolling her wheels out. And she left a path of destruction. I mean, basically, she ruined education in the state of Michigan. And it was pretty darn good prior to that. And as I watched this unfold, it kind of got quiet. And we thought, okay, well, this isn't a big deal. I hence then moved to Florida. And as we know, Trump appointed her as Secretary of Education. And that was my first red flag. That was my, wait a minute. She's a believer in privatization. What is she going to do at the federal level? And we didn't see a lot of action happening because I think they were trying to strategize. How are we going to make parents think that privatization is going to be good for them? So they did things like in Florida, for example, they have vouchers. Vouchers can now be taken by homeschool parents. I have no problem with homeschool. But of course, it's a flawed system because the accountability is not what it should be for those dollars, right? And if they make parents think that they're going to win in something, then of course they're going to get on the bandwagon of that, right? But in truth, the voucher system does not help all parents. And I would say the majority of parents cannot afford the rest of the ticket. So in Florida, for example, $8,000 or so per student is what would be sent to a family. That doesn't pay for your private schooling. That doesn't pay for, individual lessons or whatever for the whole year. And so the folks that are benefiting from these types of programs across the United States are those who are already in private school settings. It's just a kickback to them. This isn't reaching out to, low-income neighborhoods so that those kids can then go to private school, which we deem to be better. I don't really know about that one. The verdict's out on that one. But it's not an equal access to change. And that's what I'm saying. If they could guarantee that all children would get, equitable treatment, sure, I could see them maybe, changing up things in public education, but that's not the plan. Now, you can go further to say, okay, so this is based on the, white superiority complex of the country and the fear that they have that others are taking over. Well, how do you fight back? You make it so that the others are not in the same schools as them. It's very apparent. And, it's just this big war. And what we are seeing across the country, because it sounds like we should just throw up our hands in the air and say, you know what? the Kochs are going to take over everything. They're out of control and blah, blah, blah. If we can fight back on this lower level of schools, which, as I said, was the low-hanging fruit, then the next steps won't be as easy for this takeover that is planned. They are operating under Christian white nationalism, and they are being controlled by things like a document that's called the Seven Mountains Mandate, and they are to take over pillars of the society, and one of the pillars is education. So that's what we're seeing unfold right now. The Republican Party has now laid out a plan to do that. Project 2025, if your viewers don't know about it, they need to look it up because it's all spelled out in what they will do. So in our case, in education, one of the first things will be they will get rid of the Federal Department of Education. And at face value, that's kind of like, well, great, let's get rid of that bureaucracy, blah, blah, blah. Does it need to be improved? Yes, I will be the first one to say that. However, if you get rid of the Federal Department of Education, you get rid of any of the protections under law that students now have. You get rid of any of the support to special needs students that are guaranteed under the law through their IEPs. That's all federal stuff. So we can't just throw out the entire department and not have chaos happen. And that's unfortunately what's part of their plan under this project. So there's a lot of ways for people to get informed with what's going on. What's going on is not always what they talk about openly, but if you read Project 2025, there's a really good summary that we have on our Facebook group and so forth. The actual document is about 800 pages. So that's also intentional so that people don't sit down and read 800 pages, right? But if they can find out what the premise of this document is, then people will realize that this is a very planned, very scripted attack on our very democracy. And that should scare all of us. Even if they don't care about schools, what's going to be next? They're going to go after government. They will go after all of these pillars that they've set forth to have a Christian, white, nationalist, superiority push in this country. And that's not what this country is about. And that's not what the majority of people in this country want to have. We want a diverse society. We want to have equal rights. And in our case, we want public schooling. And so we're having to fight that battle, and we will fight that battle.
7:03, we've entered the second hour of the program. This is the Kennedy Effect Live with you for the 28th of April, 2024, a beautiful summer's day here in the Lehigh Valley, wherever you might be across the Facebook universe, into the little corners of Facebook that you created. They might own it, but you created it. So that means your corner of the Facebook universe. Thank you so much for being there. We could not do it without you. We've shared the program to just under 100 different places, and I have some more places to share it to in the next few minutes as our usual typical 1 hour ban of sharing should be ending in the next few minutes. And I will get the program out to the rest of you wherever you might be across the Facebook universe. Stay right there. Watch, enjoy whatever group that you may be catching us on. You can stay right there and enjoy and be part of the program, or take in the program, really is what I should say. However, if you would like to interact with us in real time live here on the program, please come to my personal Facebook. My name's right on the screen in the bottom left-hand corner. Or you can come to our Facebook, home Facebook group, That Other Side of Information. You can also put your comments and questions live on our YouTube stream, That Other Side of Information as well. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can comment and ask your questions there as well, and we hope that you will. We will open the phone line later in the program as well. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. No credit card, no profile, no email, no nothing needed to set up. You just open and listen. Hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and the TuneIn radio app. Go up to the search bar, type in hot101.net, and you are listening. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net The TCP Media Group from Lancaster, PA is part of the family as well. We will probably, in all likelihood, I'm like 95% sure that we will not be with you on the 5th of May. We will not be with you on the 12th of May. That's Mother's Day. You should be with family. So do that. We will, in all likelihood, be back with you. Well, we'll be back with you on the 19th of May. I know that's a long break to take when it's not a general holiday season, but we have some personal stuff to do next week. It's Mother's Day the week after. Take a long break, unplug from politics or whatever it is that you want to do for those 2 weeks. Hot101.net will still be here. The music will still continue. We're always on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you are on above, if you are on Earth, under it, or above it, if you can connect to the internet, you can listen to us. That is our update for now. I will do some final sharing during the next answer to this question. Lix Mikitarian, founder of Stop Moms for Liberty. Talk to me a little bit about, I don't want to, there are some broader issues that I would like to get to as including where this all-out assault on public education falls into the greater neo-fascist movement. But that said, let me drill down just a tiny bit, because you kind of made me think of something when you mentioned it, that you have $8,000 vouchers in Florida. I lived almost half my life in northeastern New Jersey, where there was a certain private school called Del Barton, which costs about $50,000-$60,000 a year. It's as much as a college. Blair Academy, not too far from where I grew up, same thing. $50,000-$70,000 a year. Not too far from here, Moravian Academy, same thing. $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. What is somebody expected to do with $8,000 in a voucher? Because I think when you present the idea of vouchers to folks who don't know the minutia of it, it sounds pretty fair. We're gonna give you the money that we would spend on your child in the public realm. We're going to give it to you. You do with it what you see fit. And I do think there's a good number of parents who think to themselves, well, I'll go to Bergen Catholic, which is another, which is a religious school in Bergen County, New Jersey, which also has college-like tuition. Or I'll take my kid to Del Barton, or I'll take him to Blair Academy, or I'll take him to Moravian Academy, or I'll take them, any one of a bunch of different places that they could take them. There's a kids school in Philadelphia, Cheltenham something or other, Cheltenham Academy or something like that. I'm forgetting it now. And it sounds like it makes perfect sense. But 8,000 really doesn't get you too far, does it?
Not at all.
It's designed not to really get you too far.
Correct. It is not a program designed so that all students will have choice, so that all parents will have choice. Even if you found an inexpensive enough school that 8,000 would make an impact, you still have other costs involved with having your child attend that school. Many times they have uniforms, many times you have to buy books, many times transportation is not provided. So it is really a false premise that people are offering choice by giving them, this kickback from the state of what they typically would have sent at the state level from into the education budgets, giving that to parents. And like I said, so it purely is going to be more of a kickback to the parents who can already afford those types of schooling situations. And, those points can't be drilled enough that, are you really offering choice? Because at face value, it may sound that, but it's not. And the other piece of that people argue, well, I pay in my taxes. Why should I have to pay into the public school system taxes so that, there can be public schools, when I'd rather get my money back and put it in where I want to put it. So that too is kind of a false premise, and it undermines what public services are all about. I pay into my fire department. I don't necessarily have a fire at my house every week. I pay into my roads that I don't necessarily drive on every week. And so a public system and support is the cost of such is spread out amongst the community. All right. That's a public system. And I would even be okay with, okay, if you pay in X amount of dollars for your local school system and you want that money back, I think I could probably live with that as a compromise. But I can tell you right now, most people in this country pay even less than $8,000 into their taxes. I have a couple properties, so I pay in probably like, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 a year. If I got that back, that wouldn't, get me too far. But if that's their argument that they shouldn't be paying for this public service, not only would they only get a small amount back, because that's all they really paid in, but then where do you stop at this shared burden of public services? Do you then have to have your own private security instead of a police department? Do you need to have your own fire suppression plan instead of having a public fire department? It's the whole premise of, do we want to have shared services as a society? And in the United States, the majority of people do want those shared services. They want to know that their roads will be taken care of, that there will be, trash collectors, although sometimes I think we pay privately for those, but that you have, the public service realm that takes care of us. And that's what public schools are really designed to do, take care of a public need. And any efforts to squash that are not going to be equitable. And that's what we're going to fight against. And we are going to win against that, because when community members realize, oh, well, they're really not talking about choice for me. It's just choice for those who could probably have that choice anyway. You know what I'm saying? So it's a false premise that they have a better plan and a better idea, because by design, it will not be inclusive of all students. And that would be a crying shame if we moved into a caste system of education.
How do you explain to folks the hypocrisy of, if not just irony of, fact that folks that are bankrolling moms and groups like them? The number of Koch groups they're almost innumerable, and I couldn't name all of them probably with a gun to my head. But the irony of what they're pushing is, we want to lower your taxes. You don't want to pay for this stuff. It's expensive. Why do you have to pay for this when we can do it privately for less money? The irony being that is economically impossible, because the public schools have no profit motive. They were not
Correct.
created to make money. They are not there to make money. They're not even there to break even. They are there to be given a pot full of money and spend all of it at a near 100% loss, except for perhaps a rainy day fund. Pile on top of that these groups are kind of publicizing, you don't want to pay for that. This isn't fair. That's your tax dollars. You want to use your tax dollars for something else, or you want to have your taxes lowered so that you don't have to pay for it at all. But yet at the same time, we want that tax money. Those vouchers are not private funds.
Correct.
The vouchers that you have in Florida, the vouchers that have been proposed in every hamlet of this country, are not private corporate kindness of their hearts donated dollars. It's tax money.
Right.
So at the same time that they're trying to flood you with, we want to lower the cost burden on you, except we don't want to pay taxes to pay for all this, except we want all that money all at the same time. How do you square that with folks who who either don't agree with you, or who just simply don't understand the minutia of that, the hypocrisy of it. How do you,
Mhm.
how does your group work against, or I shouldn't, well, yeah, I guess work against it, but also inform on it at the same time?
Yeah. Well, it's a couple of things, right? It's that same premise of, oh, my kids are grown. Why do I have to pay taxes on schools? I don't use the library. Why do I have to pay taxes? It's because we have public services. That's what I was just referring to. And so when you said people that might disagree with me, I'll have to say, so what exactly would they disagree on? Would they disagree on the system of vouchers? I'm explaining to people that vouchers are not going to be for everyone. And they can get people to believe that, but that is just not the fact. You cannot educate a child in a private setup for $8,000 a year. It's just unheard of. And that's the reality of it. And they don't tell you the reality when they push things like educational savings accounts or vouchers. And that's what we need to expose and really help people to understand that there's only a certain element that is involved in trying to make things better, and they're only wanting it better for themselves and for a very narrow segment of our population. And that's the Christian white nationalist push behind all of this. And we have to be okay with that. And I'm a Christian, so it's not like I'm downing Christianity. I'm saying that this is out of control as far as the harm that is being done to people, not only financially, as we're talking about, but the harm that's being done on this premise of people are doing God's work by, shunning people or eliminating people from being able to do things. Really? That's not even, something that until it's pointed out to people, they don't even grasp that concept. So our work against this is the exposure of what's really going on. So you've got a little retired kindergarten teacher like me who never in a million years thought that I was going to be doing the work that I'm doing now. But I saw my profession being attacked. And I saw all of this false information being put out there, including oh, we should move to privatized schools. You can't privatize a system and run it like a business when the products you're funneling in are so varied. There's an old analogy type, I guess it's a poem, I don't know, about making blueberry ice cream. You can structure the process of making blueberry ice cream, right? You have to have a certain level of blueberries. They all have to kind of look alike. And you can't waver from that to then create this, perfect batch of ice cream. Whereas in schools, we have a variety of, I'll even for, clarity say product coming in that we need to then produce educated citizenry from. And so to say that, we can do things in one way and it's only this way means that they only want one element of society to benefit from that system. So privatization is not to benefit all Americans. It just simply isn't. And anyone that says that it will benefit needs to look at the prison system because that has not improved. They need to look at, other things that they can compare to. When they privatize, you lose things like oversight, you lose things like accountability, and you hit the nail on the head. These are not private dollars. The Koch brothers are not investing in an entire new school system across the United States, right? That is fully inclusive and would give great education. That's not what they're doing. They are weeding out who they don't want to be educated. They want them to have failing schools or, just have things fall apart, except for this little branch of society that, thinks like them, looks like them, and that's how they want to move forward. So that's the kind of realities that we try very hard to share across our network. And we're in 46 states, I think, at this point. And this is the same argument in every one of the places where not only Moms for Liberty, but other far right extremists are just spilling all of this disinformation really out into a community. So Privatization will not help when it's children we're talking about, because it's a weeding out process. And who gives anybody the right to weed out a particular child? It's just not moral, honestly. And when we're talking about a private system, we're talking about hidden costs and, even things as much as, I would have kids that would wear the same outfit every single day for the school year. I worked in a Title I school, and you know what? It was okay because it was the child that came to school. But that kid's not going to be able to go to a private school and do that without being absolutely tortured and, against the rules of the school or whatever. So private schools public schools are the only place where we can try and even that playing field so that each child is seen as an individual. It doesn't matter who their parents are. It doesn't matter where they live. That child is a living and breathing citizen that we want to mold into being a great citizen. And that's not what the goal is of the folks that are trying to privatize. They want to have two classes of people, and we just can't allow that to happen.
Patricia mentions in the comment section, again, my private Facebook there, Jeff Kennedy, that other side of information is our home group Facebook page. I'm continuing to try to check to see if any of you are asking comments or questions of any of the other 100. I got my sharing done. My little Facebook ban went away. So I think we're up to 120 something places. Yeah, it's begun to become an every Sunday thing. I get up to about 100. Then it stops and you can't share anymore. You're spamming people. And then after one whole whopping hour, it goes away and then I'm fine. I don't know. I suppose it's artificial quote unquote intelligence. I honestly don't know. But Patricia mentions in the comment section an $8,000 voucher from the state does not take into account school taxes paid locally for school districts. State funds are inefficient to cover K through 12 education, which is largely true throughout the country. Local taxes alone are not enough to cover these costs. And you might get money for a voucher from the state, but it doesn't cover. It simply won't take care of the tuition of some of these schools. And again, these private schools you have to apply to be part of them. Is that right, Liz? I mean, you don't just walk up with a check and they take you in. You have to be accepted. There's an application process.
Correct. And that application process can be discriminatory because there is no oversight. So if you have a child that's from the LGBTQ plus community, they can turn down that child. If their parents are in that community, they can turn down that child. Sorry, I'm having to plug my phone in here. So yeah.
It would be the same though for autism, for
absolutely
a child who might be physically disabled and the building isn't ADA compliant, or
absolutely.
It could be, any one of 100 different reasons. They do get to pick and choose. And I think you said something very salient a minute ago that I don't think quite pushed down hard enough on. I mean, as you mentioned, the private education industry is not an entirely new industry that the Kochs are seeding with money because they think they can make a mint on it, right? They're not starting an entirely new industry. They're trying to suck the money out of the industry pipeline that already exists. The people who don't want to pay taxes, the people who have literally spent billions of dollars because they don't want to pay taxes, want your tax money. And it goes back to this philosophy that we've talked about a lot in the program this calendar year, is this idea of the 1%, especially the 0.01%, that what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine.
Correct.
And this idea, this fake idea of inflation that we keep getting thrown at us, that corporations cannot have the highest corporate profits in the history of mankind, and yet there's still inflation. There is these things don't go together. So it seems to me that this is Patricia makes a really good point. The $8,000 that you're getting from the state, I know we mentioned it a bit ago, but the $8,000 that you're getting from your state is simply not enough. The
No.
local property taxes that you're already paying into the system are not accounted for and not compensated inside that, in Florida anyway, that $8,000. Some states have only talked about 5,000. Well, if eight's
Yeah.
not going to get it done, five sure as hell isn't going to get it done either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, even in states where it's an $11,000-$12,000 per year per student, those are shared costs, because when you are actually, managing, I'll call it, a school, you have joint resources. You have, one PE field for, all of those students, or one set of books that will then matriculate through the years for students. When you look at that, then you can actually produce education on the amounts that states give. In most circumstances, it needs to be a higher rate. We all know that. And I mean, Florida's is ridiculous at $8,000 a year. But we are doing what we can. And although it's underfunded, it's funded. And public schools in various places have been very impactful and very effective. Are there things that need to improve? Absolutely. I'm the first one to say that. But attacking a public school system across an entire country, which is what we're seeing happen, that's not the solution, folks, because this alternative that they're offering, that, oh, we need to privatize education, that's not gonna help you and I. It truly is not. It's gonna help, just like you said, the 1%, the less than 1%. It's gonna help families who, they've just saved up for education, even at that level. I have one in college right now, so I can tell you I needed to save up just for college. You don't want to have a society where parents have to save not enough money that they go to pay for elementary school, pay for middle school, pay for high school. We can't do it as a society. The funds just are not there. And to say anything other than that, to attack the one system that is available to all students, anybody that goes to a public school must be accepted. That's not the premise of a private system. It's just not. And so, just like you said, students with disabilities, they can be told by a private school, oh, sorry, we can't service you because X, Y, and Z. Public school doesn't have the authority to do that. And so that's at least offering a starting point for every student. And like I said, does there need to be improvement? Absolutely. And I've worked on that my entire career. But if we don't have a public school system, we're truly screwed as a society.
And I think that's part of the step-by-step degradation of the system too, is that with these vouchers in place, if they might even be enough to get a family to get their child to a different type school. Again, it's the picking and the choosing and the everyone that's left is what's left in the public schools. And now we have so greatly underfunded them because we took all that money out, we gave it to vouchers. It really is it's the everyone that's left. It's the children who may not be equally abled. It's the ones who have learning disabilities. It's the ones who are autistic, or might be developmentally disabled, physically disabled. The ones who are the single most expensive to educate and to help them become full members of the society, despite whatever challenges they might be facing. And that's, if you can't destroy the system all in one fell swoop, that would be a step-by-step way to do it, is to strip the public schools of money and then leave them with the single most expensive groups of people to educate.
Yep. Correct. I call all marginalized groups those that are underserved. And that's what we would have a system of, the underserved, that just kind of show up, and maybe they'll have teachers, maybe they won't at the trajectory we're going. And those that have the means to go to some of the academies that you just listed in your area, right? Those will be the educated people. Those will be the people that have the opportunities in our country. And that is not what our country was built on. The Statue of Liberty says, send me all your people. They can be free. They can have liberty here. And it's just ironic that Moms for Liberty is really fighting against liberty in a lot of respects. So it's really a sticky situation to get people to understand. But I like to also explain the concept itself of choice, right? Choice is great if everyone gets that choice. In our system, we have choice schools, which some places in the country, they also have that concept where, there's either a particular focus at a school that their strength is, let's say, in the arts or maybe in engineering, those kinds of developmental type things, programs. And it's touted as a choice. But in our situation, there was a really bad budget year. And so the transportation to those schools was no longer available to some of the kids that live further away. So, for example, the school that I taught in, we had kids that were supposed to be bused to one of the best middle and high school combinations in the country. And they were bused for a while. That's great. That's an equal shot of having choice. These happen to be Black students. You cut off the busing. Now, all of a sudden, that's really not choice. And yet, no one's really calling that whole concept out. If it's a choice, it needs to be a choice for everyone. And a lot of that is the financial piece. So it's really a false narrative that they're pushing that, oh, well, we'll just take, what the money is that's going to public schools and we'll put it over here. And therefore, parent, you're going to have a choice. It's not true. It is not true.
It would seem
Some
to
will
be
have a
that
choice.
the only choice that's being made is by the industry. We'll take this one. Nah, not that one so
Absolutely.
much. Not that one
Absolutely.
so much. They're the only ones making the choice. 7:32. The Kennedy Effect is live with you, 28th of April, 2024. Hot101.net. Our name is our web address. Apple App Store, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio app, the TCP Media Group from Lancaster, and 100 and something. 1 second, I'll tell you in a second here. Very, very cool of me, isn't it? Oh, 115. 115. I thought it was more than that. I probably forgot a bunch because I know last week we were at 138. So 115, I probably forgot a bunch of groups, and it makes it actually quite difficult to get all the groups without doing them 2 and 3 times, which then of course becomes annoying to the groups, and I don't blame them 100% at all, because then I lose track of where I'm sharing. But I think we've actually moved ourselves very smoothly into a question from Sherry Morgan. Sherry, among her many lists of accomplishments, probably the bottom of that list in exceptionally small print is that she's my friend. She has much greater accomplishments than that. Mom of a special needs son herself. She is the current chair of the Pennsylvania State Democratic Committee Progressive Caucus. Her question in the comments, then, it's a very broad question, but I think we've led actually directly into it, because I do think some parents, as you mentioned, the system needs improving. There's no question about it. You really would have to have your head in the sand to not think that there are not improvements that could be made and that should not be made. There should be, absolutely. And
absolutely.
Striving to perfect the public education process, not shut it down. So that said, Sherry's question is, and her question came in the midst of our voucher discussion for some context. So how do we improve our public schools? How do we make them the top choice for parents and students? And I would add, how do we make them the top choice for educators?
That is like the question of the century. That's what our goal should be, right? I can't just say, oh, we need to save public schools. I also need to say, so here's how we're going to make things better. And as a parent of a special needs student, I'm sure she has experiences to share that should not have happened. And that is most typically in, a public school setting. And those things do need to be addressed, and we need to have improvement. But what has happened is the school system as a whole, and I say that like as the whole country of public schools, have lost focus on what they actually are supposed to be doing, and that is educating children. And yes, we have all this culture war stuff going on, but I can assure you, we have not moved away from trying to get kids to read and write. I did it for 30 years. So that is still there. The desire of the people that are the professionals that are entrusted with these children to come to us want to teach them. But what we're doing instead is trying to have things run more like a business, paperwork people to death. The IEP process itself is all about documentation, whereas it should be about, okay, so what can we do to improve this child's experience? The whole concept of improving schools, it really went off a cliff when they implemented standardized testing across the country. That was the greatest attack I think that has happened, because the powers that be, mostly again from the Republican Party, sad to say, but decided that there needed to be an accountability process, that these teachers needed to be held accountable. I'm the first one to say, yeah, absolutely. Now, our, I guess, misstep as an education profession is that we didn't design a way for ourselves to make our profession be accountable. We let things be done to us. Now, I don't know if we want to blame unions or we want to blame just educators on the whole. I don't know. But that's why that came to pass. We allowed people with some pretty nefarious plans to fill in that, how are we going to make schools better? We'll hold them accountable. Well, what happened? The standardized testing craze was the whole mantra that was pushed with accountability, accountability, accountability. So number one, that increased the level of mistrust in educators. Okay, instead of working with us, it was, we're going to find out how bad you are. All right. So now file this away. Who prompted the standardized testing craze? It was mostly out of the Republican Party, right? Some of these big heavy duty pockets as well were pushing for it.
It's a way to make money.
It was a design to have schools show failure. So tests were culturally not appropriate. They were often mistaken in the content within tests, right? We moved into computerized testing. There's all kinds of flaws with that. And it's all designed to show that schools are bad, as opposed to, where's the tool to help us to show what our strengths are? Yes, show us our weaknesses, but then give us the support to fix weaknesses. But that wasn't the goal of standardized testing. It was pushed by the major publishing companies, which are funded and often owned by these deep pockets. They developed the tests. One of the biggest ones in the day back in, I don't know, we're talking the 80s when this really started growing and blossoming. Pearson Publishing Company was one of the first that was doing a lot of the manufacturing of the tests. So they make these tests. In my opinion, they are culturally insensitive. I gave tests in West Virginia. If you have an item on a test that talks about an escalator, and these kids are coming off the mountains to come to school, do you expect them to achieve? No. So it's going to show that those children and that school are flawed. So then what happens after these test reports that everyone splashed across the news with, numbers that made it look bad, and teachers' names even are posted with, lower test scores and so forth? Well, what does the school system do? Then they start investing in remedial materials. So you get your new book series, you get your additional workbooks, you get your manipulatives to use. Well, who's making all of those?
Pearson.
The Pearsons of the world, the folks that designed the test to show failure so that their products will be purchased by districts. Talk about a kind of a very disingenuous ring of accountability. And I saw that unfolding right before my eyes. The testing craze was not the earlier part of my career at all. And it was, like I said, partially our fault as a profession that we didn't say, oh, no, 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 we're not going to take that road. We're going to take this road instead. Things like peer remediation for teachers and things that actually do have impact on classroom instruction. The testing craze was so crazy, Jeff, that I would test kids and that group of kids would then move on to the next grade. I wouldn't get their test scores until the following year. That's how nuts it was. So how am I as an educator supposed to address any of the things that I saw on these tests that are supposed to inform instruction when I now have a whole new set of kids that hasn't been tested yet to give me that data? So it's a whole flawed system of accountability. And we need to look at real solutions instead of the gotcha moments. And, oh, this school is bad because X, Y, and Z. We need to find out why. We need to find out why. Because educators have dedicated their lives to doing this work and so many things. And I won't even say that the unions are, the answer to this. I won't say that because I know that that's kind of a big point of contention nationally as well. I think the unions serve a purpose. I will leave it at that. So I'm not expecting, the unions to fix this. I believe that educators, once they're, risen within the stature in society, we can fix this. Just let us know and let us actually get to the drawing table to try and come up with these solutions that we know will work in classrooms. Instead, you have people that have never even been in a school setting other than when they were a kid, making decisions that impact what we do in public education. And that is flawed. You have people at the state level, you have people, even I think some at the national level, although it's not as bad right now. But I mean, to put a Betsy DeVos in the driving seat for education across this country, this woman has never even probably been in a public school. She even admits that.
And didn't visit one the entire time she was secretary.
No. So I think the solutions are there. Things like full inclusion programs that actually have all the support needed to make that functional. That's what I was able to develop in Michigan when I taught there. I worked in conjunction with a special ed teacher. We had a full inclusion program within a classroom. But as a regular classroom teacher, I was given all the support in the world to make this function. And guess who benefited the most? Not those kids with IEPs. It was the rest of the student body who got great teaching techniques, who got extra attention, who truly benefited from realizing that there are no throwaway kids. Just because a kid might have a difficulty in one area or another, just because they have a learning difference, they're not throwaway. Some of the greatest geniuses of all times, they have, said that they were autistic, or they've said, oh, yeah, they had a learning disability. We can't throw people away like that. And providing those services is what people on, the education side of things, it's what we want to do, but oftentimes our hands are tied by things like budget cuts. Right now in my county, we have 200 teacher openings. So that means that, times 30 kids are impacted by all of this garbage that's going on, because teachers are finally just saying, you know what? I've had enough. I can't fight this battle anymore. And unfortunately, this whole movement on the side of Moms for Liberty,
which is also part of it too. That's just also part of it too, is to make teachers quit.
Absolutely.
That's all a part of this too. Try to force teachers to quit. And teacher shortages, of course, are yet another strike against the public system that the private industry can then go back to parents. They can't even fill out a staff here. We have a full staff of teachers. Of course, those teachers are non-unionized. They do not have to meet the same state requirements for an educational level to then teach. The cycle of it, I find, is just, I don't understand how it's not more obvious and not more apparent. The amount of pushback that I got during the entirety of the Trump regime, when I would be on this program or in private conversations saying, that Betsy DeVos was in charge of a department that she did not even think should exist.
Correct.
And people would say to me, well, then how can she be in charge? That's a great question. Then how
Part of the
can she
plan.
be in charge of it? It's all part of the plan was to degrade and it's to end public education. I think that's the thing that sometimes don't always understand. Well, they're attacking public education. Well, yeah, they are. The goal of the attack, though, is to end it. When a lion attacks a gazelle for food, the goal is to kill it and eat it. It's nature. It might be gross. We don't like to see it in our nature programs. We feel sorry for the cute gazelle. It is nature. This is
Yep.
not terribly different in that the goal is not just to hamper public education or to stifle it. It's to end it as we know it. It's to catch it, kill it. And that's kind of the thing. I want to ask though, the testing craze, as you put it, how did that roll in how did that manifest itself in the George W. Bush era program of No Child Left Behind, where it seemed to me that the goal of the program was to punish the schools that already didn't work right starve them of money because they didn't work right because they didn't have any money. And
Yeah,
that
it's kind of illogical, isn't it?
It became its own
We'll reward the schools that are already doing well, and we will criticize and punish the schools that are not doing well. Instead of finding out, okay, so why aren't they doing well? Which testing really doesn't tell us because it fluctuates so much from year to year. You can sometimes review data and get some patterns that you can address, but overall, it does not inform instruction on an individual classroom basis. You can get a generalized idea, let's just say in mathematical scores. If your kids always did poorly in algebra, maybe you need to look at your teaching strategies for teaching algebra. So you can get some generalized information, but typically it's not usable. And yet it's taking millions and millions of dollars across this country. It's taking an unbelievable amount of time away from actual instruction. We're talking kindergartners having to learn how to do a test on a computer. They're not, illiterate in computers, but it's still getting them to sit there, pay attention, do this. I would much rather be telling my kindergartners, how to recognize consonants and vowels. The real meat and potatoes of what I'm supposed to be teaching them. It's not testing. And you've heard the term teach for the test. Yeah, that became a real thing because then we were being held accountable, sometimes publicly, for bad test scores. Invariably, I have had principals that are like, oh, we got to get up the test scores. We got to do this. Where was the message of we have to be better at our teaching and this is how we need to do it? It was all about test score, test score. Well, I could tell you every one of my students where they were at, where they needed to get to. I don't need some test from Pearson or wherever else to inform my instruction of how I'm supposed to teach a particular group of kids. That only comes from looking at students, student development, and actual placement of where students are in their learning cycle so that we can address the individual students. You cannot standardize students, so you should not be standardizing testing. It just doesn't fly. It's not a good use of funds.
So where's the disconnect then? This all seems pretty obvious to you and I. I think anybody who might be listening to us, whether live or on the recorded version of the program, can follow the logical steps that we've gone through here and can kind of understand where we're coming from. And I would even go so far as to say that there are people that do have legitimate concerns with the system. I don't always, even the most powerful union in the country might just still be the Major League Baseball Players Association. I mean, they pretty much rule the sport. They get what they want. But even they will support when a player is accused of domestic violence or betting on the game, even
Correct.
this will support the expulsion of said player. Teachers unions have in the past been accused, sometimes rightly, sometimes for propaganda purposes, of kind of closing ranks and not allowing the bad teachers to go.
Yep.
That merit, once you've achieved tenure, you could just sit back and read the newspaper. And I had some teachers that did it, by the way, turned the book to this page and sat and read the newspaper for 45 minutes. And they did that for 8 periods a day. And that the sole answer to the problems is not just more and more and more and more money. So how do we square the obvious hypocrisy within the system? For example, a inner city, overwhelmingly minority, dramatically underfunded school, with the building itself probably falling down right on top of the kids with lead pipes still in them.
Right.
That is quote unquote underperforming. So to punish that school, we will deny them even more money.
Correct.
How do we square that against what are legitimate concerns that tenure has eliminated merit, and we can't just keep throwing money at it because that hasn't gotten us everywhere we need to go? How do those two things, how do you square those two things when those concerns are brought to you within this discussion?
Right. Well, I think the answer to all of it is that teaching needs to be professional. And that's the piece that I think people struggle with. To this day, I have people say, well, you had all those summers off. I never had a summer off. Oh, well, you leave at 3:00. I never left at 3:00. So that whole set of, I guess, mantras was allowed to keep going and going and going. So there was distrust in the teaching profession because people honestly thought we had it easy. We're just babysitting, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I'm sitting there trying to teach a kid their alphabet so that they can eventually read one day. I was a kindergarten teacher, I should say. And so if we can raise my and our profession to the level of what some of the other professions are, it's going to square all of this situation. It is going to help the salary positions to finally get to the levels that they should be. There's no way that we should be paid less than a doctor. There is no way that we should be paid less than a lawyer. Sorry, we are professionals. But until we make that push of professionalism, and that includes policing ourselves. And I say that it sounds like an easy thing to do, right? But it is a huge change. But let me tell you where it starts. I was the supervising teacher for a bunch of college kids coming through. This was up in Michigan. I would have 2 and 3 intern teachers at a time. Frankly, most of them were fantastic. And I would have my own child, in their classroom. That's the level of professionals coming through. But there were a few that I was able to provide some guidance to and make them better. But I had one, and I knew she didn't belong in our profession. And it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, but I stood in the way of her path to become an educator. And I mean, it was heart-wrenching because I got to know her personally and so forth. But until we do that piece of policing ourselves, then we're going to be at the mercy of those who choose to police us. Teachers have years of training on pedagogy and, how to address individual needs of students and how to make it all function and flow throughout, classroom management throughout the day. This is our levels of expertise. We have been so pulled into all of this other garbage. And like I said, we're partially responsible because we haven't policed ourselves. We need to address things like bad teachers being kept. I'm the first one to say that, and I'm the first one to want them out of my profession. And yes, there needs to be a different structure in place so that it's not easy for whatever. Tenure is being done away with in most of the country at this point, I think. But there should be a doctor is not necessarily a doctor forever and is untouchable, right? You have a board and you can
Right.
report a physician for
There's
malpractice.
licensing involved.
Right, right. But when we see, you know, resources and support being spent on the situations like you're describing, that there's really somebody that needs to go, we need to be a profession that can say, yes, you need to go. And that sounds really harsh, but until we get to that level and we don't put up with the things that happen that we know are fundamentally wrong. I'm supporting a teacher right now, and part of what she has disclosed to me, because they've come after her, they're attacking her. She had a colleague in the same school that was calling students the N-word, and yet they weren't investigating that person. That person does not belong in a classroom. And so we need a structure set up in a different way that will really not shelter the bad teachers. It will build and support the good teachers, because there are more of us out there than the other. But the other is what is hurting our profession. You typically don't have a doctor that practices for years and years and years unchecked. Usually somebody reports that doctor to whatever, their board or, administrators, whatever, right? And we don't have that policy and practice that each person in education should be empowered to help police their profession. And I'm not talking about, hide with a clipboard and try to catch another colleague, having too many cups of coffee or something one day. I'm
Sleeping in
talking about,
teachers.
yep, I'm talking about the serious nature of, if we know there's an educator sitting at the desk reading something totally unrelated to what's going on in their classroom, and the kids have been given worksheets or books, as you were talking about, that needs to stop. And until that kind of stuff is addressed, then this negative perception of teachers won't improve. Until we get rid of the bad apples, the majority, who are the good apples, will not rise to that level of professionalism that we deserve. Because frankly, we put a whole heck of a lot of work into this profession, but we just haven't risen to the status. I mean, honestly, I retired at like $40,000 a year. Come on. I mean, that doesn't even really pay a mortgage. So, I'm not a sole breadwinner, but how can we have the level of involvement in society that the system of education and that teachers need to have? How can we not be putting more money into teacher pockets to actually dedicate themselves to this work? It is going to have to change, because yes, that's one of the reasons that teachers are leaving left and right. The main reason right now, because we've always been underpaid, right? And the main reason they're leaving is that teachers are under attack, and that it's just too much. They've pushed them over the edge. So not only are you not getting a substantial paycheck for doing this work, now you're being called a groomer. Now you're being called, a pedophile supporter. It's like,
So,
really?
so
So
who's
we
filling
need to
in these
shelter our
positions
profession.
in this private for-profit industry? Who's filling in these positions? Because I find that the argument to tear down, or arguments plural, to tear down public education are just rife with hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That public school teachers are, oh, the union protects all the bad ones. They're overpaid. They don't work summers. They work 180 days. They have the rest of the year off. On and on and on and on. But yet in these private for-profit and parochial schools as well, to be honest, religious schools,
Mm-hmm.
the teachers do not have to meet same level of certification. In
Correct.
most cases, they are non-union.
Mm-hmm.
They sure as hell aren't getting paid what you were getting paid.
No, they're paid even
Who the
less.
hell is filling in these positions in the private side, in the private for-profit side of the industry? Who's teaching there? I have no doubt that many of these folks are good-hearted, coming
Mm-hmm.
from coming from the right place. He tried to say, coming from the right place in their hearts and in their, the call, if you will, to educate and shape young minds and to provide these kids with a basis through which they can take care of themselves throughout their lives. Then again, as we talked about with the selective acceptance process. A lot of them were born with that spoon in their mouths in the first place. But that said, that there are good human beings in these private positions trying to teach and do the right thing.
Sure.
But they're not you. But they're not you either. So who the heck? Just again, the irony and the hypocrisy, the argument to me is so obvious, but yet we seem to have such trouble overcoming it. I mean, who's filling these positions?
Well, a lot of people that are connected to whichever the school is, that happens a lot, either from the parent base. If it's a church affiliation, it might be church members who, can step into these kinds of roles. So, where they're coming from, I don't know. And I don't know that if they're having any shortages as well. They may be, but I know of the shortages in the public school system. And in the public school system, what's happening is if there's a shortage, they're doing, several things. They're cutting programming, which translates into high school classes, right? That they eliminate certain classes. That's how you function when you
usually music and the arts first.
Yeah. I was just in a meeting where they cut I believe it was a drama program. And no, excuse me, it's a chorus program. And those are the kind of positions that they will eliminate, right, to do cost savings. And so what happens? The kids aren't getting those experiences. And I have to tell you, frankly, some of those experiences save a lot of these kids' lives. That's the fundamental piece of why we need to be offering a well-rounded education to kids. So what's happening in the public school setting is they're eliminating programs. They will eventually start closing down schools. I was just at another county where that is on the drawing board already. And they will combine classes. If they had two 15-student French classes, now they'll have one 30, 40-student French class with one instructor. So those are the cost savings, I guess, solutions that they're coming up with. And it's not what's good for kids. And so they're doing things like contracting with other countries and having, these contracts with those that can come in and take over positions. And so, they're trying to be creative and really fill this current need. But I'm not totally sure that all of this, I'll call it replacement, that's going on is going to benefit our kids. We've got, lots of things on the drawing board of, well, you can get this easier certification and then you'll be certified, you can go and teach. Well, I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of, post-secondary work that trained me to be the teacher that I am. You're telling me that someone can take a little mini class for 6 months and be able to go and have impact in a classroom the way that those kids deserve? That's a tough pill to swallow. That's not only undermining my experience, but it's saying that, oh yeah, it's not important enough for us to make sure that the kids are getting the very best. We'll just make sure that they get enough, that, they'll exist. So, yeah, I think teacher shortages will continue to grow unless things change dramatically. And all of these so-called solutions, this whole push for recruitment into the teaching profession, younger people aren't stupid. They see what's going on. They see the attacks. And like I have stated, we've always been underpaid and we can continue to fight that battle. But young people are not going to come and be attacked because they've chosen to take care of other people's kids, because it involves too much emotion. It involves too much giving of ourselves that, don't pay me. That's one thing, but sure as hell, don't attack me. And that's what's driving a lot of the lack of who's filling those positions, because people just, they're not going into the profession. So we need to address that, and we need to address it fast.
8:04, we've entered the final hour of the program. It's been a blink tonight. It's been a blur. A very, very quick 2 hours. We have entered the final hour of the program. This is the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 28th of April, 2024. We will not, in all likelihood, I'm like 99% sure we will not be with you for May 5th. We will definitely 100% not be with you on May 12th. That's Mother's Day. Hang out with mom or a grandmom or a godmother or aunt or whoever might fill in that very important part of your life Or if you are the husband of the wife with the kids, then take care of mom. You know what I mean? So do that instead. Next week, just some personal stuff here that we're doing. Pretty sure we won't be with you. Definitely not on the 12th. Wherever you might be across the Facebook universe, thank you so much for being there, trying very hard to keep up with the comments, making sure that folks are not commenting questions in other places that I'm not seeing them. I haven't missed anything so far. If I did, keep shouting at me. I will find it. My Facebook, Jeff Kennedy. That other side of information is our home group Facebook page. Hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and the TuneIn Radio app. You can also tell Alexa to play Hot101.net, the TCP Media Group as well. The Villain's View comes up immediately after us on hot101.net and at my home Facebook page, group, thing, corner. He lost the word he wanted to use. My little piece of Facebook, that other side of information. The Villain's View comes up immediately after us. That's Sergeant Mac and the crew, starting from 9 p.m. Eastern time, right here on hot101.net and that other side of information on Facebook as well. If you have missed any of the program thus far, how dare you? I am personally, but that said, please go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/that other side of information. Everything is there. Every program we've ever done is right there. 5+ years of them now, right there. That other side of information on YouTube. And as soon as we're done here, we're live there right now as well, come to think of it. And as soon as we're done, it will stay there. You can catch up. That's probably the easiest and best place to catch up with the program. We're thrilled that right around the top of last hour, executive technical mega wizard master technical producer George dropped in. Very thrilled that he's here. It's always a better program when George is here as well. We continue with Lix Mikitarian, her third visit, 3 strikes and she's in. Her third visit to the program. I love when I tell guests that you are always welcome to come here and that you always have the keys to the castle, and then they listen and they actually come back when there is new stuff to report. So that makes me feel very good to have Liz with us. She is the founder of Stop Moms for Liberty. Stop Moms for Liberty, 46 states and counting now, literally trying to save and improve public education across this country. In the comments, Randall says, why would you want to teach with a low salary and having to pay off extremely high interest student loans? You're 100%. I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Then again,
well, let me tell you why. Because this is a passion that people go into education. They are drawn to it. It is really a profession. And they disregard, what the reality is sometimes. At least they have been up until the last couple of years, because we didn't have these attacks going on. But that's what the crucial issue is right now. And that's why I even developed what I have across the country, is why are they going after teachers as a profession? And that's what needs to stop. And like I've said, you can have improvement, but you don't have to take down and destroy an entire system in the process of doing that, because I don't see an alternative that would fill in the gap across the country. And what it will do is create a 2-tiered system, and that is not healthy for our country.
As we enter the final hour, I'd like to obviously stick with the main topic, but I want to try to take it in arguably what is more of a 50,000 foot view, the old analogy, the old metaphor of, to view it from 50,000 feet. And it's something that I highlighted in the description of the program as we were promoting the program and so on. In your opinion, and it's an educated opinion, obviously, because of the group that you founded, it would seem to me that the Stop Moms, sorry, I knew I was going to do that.
That's okay.
It would seem to me that Moms for Liberty is merely a piece of the pie, not the pie.
Mm-hmm.
They're an appendage of the larger body that is literally trying to reshape American society
Mm-hmm.
into what I believe to be a theocracy, an oligarchy, rule by the rich,
Mm-hmm.
a dismantling of government, the end of the American experiment.
Right.
And one way to ensure yourself an endless supply of low-wage drone workers is to not educate anyone. At the same time, again, part of the massive hypocrisy of the education debate is to try to somehow convince every child that they need a college education to get
Right.
anywhere in life. But then again, that's a business too, because you
Mm-hmm.
have to loan most of the money that you need to go, and that locks you into a lifelong cycle of debt. There's no home ownership. But then again, the construction industry, not the construction industry so much, the real estate development industry has now shifted away from single family homes. We now build huge apartment buildings, which is then a lifetime of rent. We never own anything.
Mm-hmm.
Where does Moms for Liberty fit into this greater effort by the evangelical Christian industry,
Mm-hmm.
the oligarchs, the conservative industry, the Second Amendment? I mean, like overly Second Amendment, the kind of guys
Right.
I'm talking about, the ones who want to wear their AR-15 to Starbucks, the over militarized police, all of these things. And by the way, these underserved folks who get poor educations generally end up in the military. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, they're the first ones to go. It's the United States Navy that defends and keeps the shipping lanes open for ExxonMobil to bring their oil out of Saudi Arabia as they ship the oil out of the United States to Japan.
Right.
That said, so where does Moms for Liberty fit into this greater reshaping of American society away from the New Deal, away from what the framers had intended, to
Mm-hmm.
this sort of libertarian slash, I don't even know what this, fascist sort of dream? Where do moms fit into that greater whole, in your opinion?
Well, if you have an oligarch come and be the face of something, it's going to be evident. And so people will automatically push back. What they have done is drawn a really pretty face on that movement. And they have moms who everyone loves come to the microphone, have the meetings, do their podcasts and whatever, with that face of being a mom and caring for kids. Because if it had been unsoiled, they would have gone through all the way with this trajectory of exactly the things that you talked about, the oligarchy, the theology. I mean, that is the direction, right? And so they have made it acceptable to push this narrative. But because of the missteps that I've mentioned, the hiring practices and their mismanagement of some things, that's flawed that image. So in my estimation, all of those things that you listed as you counted off on your hands, those have all been in play for decades in this country. And the plan to take over has been probably since 1619, to tell you the truth, when the whole thought was there's going to be a ruling class and there will be others, that othering of people. And so within that trajectory, they have not made as much progress ever until they put lipstick and pearls and a nice little navy blue t-shirt onto what they are actually up to, because it was acceptable. As citizens, we all accept the concept of motherhood. We all accept the concept of saving the children. And unfortunately, they've used the wrong kinds of information, and I won't call it necessarily lies, but it's certainly manipulated the public with what's actually going on, because it looked at face value. I mean, who wouldn't support a mom, right? Any mom that goes to a microphone, people are going to listen. But people are now catching on to, wait a minute, that's not actually what's happening here. And so in my estimation, and why I have hope and, get up every day, is that their strength, because of all these missteps, because their image, I'll say, has been dirtied up a bit, I think this is going to be the greatest attack on our country that was ever put together. And they were going along pretty darn well. We're talking about they flipped 200 and some odd school board seats in one election. That's a huge accomplishment. And like I said, that's the low hanging fruit. The next step would be your, county offices, your city offices, and so forth. And so they were on this like upward trajectory of being the final, I guess, piece in that puzzle of how do we push what's actually going on. And those are the things that you listed off when you said, the upper 1%, and you're talking about, people wanting to be the person, the oligarchy concept. So I feel a lot of hope, because if this isn't working, because now it's starting to backfire, people are starting to realize the truth that that's that kind of evil underpinning that has been pushing and pushing and pushing for decades. And that's where people that are a little bit older like me have seen that grow and kind of, go away, then come back, go away, then come back. This is the greatest simple or a single push and attack on the public school system that I've ever seen. And I think if this does not succeed, which it's looking like it won't, then those things that you mentioned on your hand when you counted them off, those things are going to be dealt a tremendous blow. And the pushback, because the majority of people don't agree with the things that you listed on your hands, because it's really going to hurt them in the long run, right? The majority of people, once they realize what's happening, say, wait a minute, this isn't really about parents. This isn't about parents' rights. And all we've done is point out the false nature of some of the stuff that they've put out. Moms for Liberty has made a whole generation or two of parents think that they don't have rights. That's fundamentally wrong. They have rights in every school. Parents have always been able to look at every book in a school, always been able to look at curriculum materials, always been able to participate at their school. They've done this whole false narrative of, oh, they're keeping the doors closed and they don't want you to be involved. Are there, some negative interactions? Absolutely, and those need to be addressed. But on the whole, public schools have been very inclusive of parents and always have been. Gosh, I had parents working in my classroom with me most of the years that I taught. So that is a false premise that they're putting forward, that they're going to give them parents' rights. They already have those rights. Parents have been able to object to any book, have been able to put in play a message to the school that my child is not allowed to take out X book or X subject in books. That's always been in place. But instead, they've used it as this big negative, oh, look at what they're doing, and they're hiding things from you. And it's not working, because people are starting to understand, wait a minute, that's not true. To say that, the librarian is sitting down and teaching kids how to be gay, people are realizing how ridiculous that approach to this is. It's so false, and it's just so ridiculous that people are starting to catch on that, oh, wait a minute, this isn't quite what I thought it was. We have a lot of members that used to be Moms for Liberty members, and that says something.
We'll open up the phone line here pretty shortly. I'll put the number up on the screen. First off, the number's already on the screen. It's in George's square. But I will put the number in my square as well. I don't know what is happening to me at the moment. Everything's falling apart. The radio guy can't.
It's a long time. Yeah.
Time to get out of the chair. I want to ask you, as we move into, or at least the potential for phone calls, or at least put the, we'll get the number up and all that. As we move into that, let me ask you this question. You mentioned, I think in your last visit, and we mentioned a little bit in the, electronic chat that we had leading up to your revisiting us tonight, that there are moms chapters that are, well, there's some that are simply dissolving,
Mhm.
that they are losing membership, but others are rebranding.
Yes.
Tell us about this rebranding movement that,
Mhm.
well, the agenda really hasn't changed. The faces and the names and the t-shirts, that might have changed a little bit.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. And I don't think any of those groups or any of those newly named efforts are going to hold a candle to what they accomplished under that Moms for Liberty brand. That was impactful, and it really made an imprint across the country. In the Midwest, they have Awake. Think it began with Awake Illinois is the name of the group there that grew in strength, and they have the same type of agenda. And now they've reached out and they're trying to open chapters, but they had the perfect structure in place. Moms for Liberty was the perfect vehicle for them to push what they were trying to push, and it is failing. And so nothing else is going to rise to that level because people won't be as easily fooled. So they can say they're, parents for democracy or parents for choice or this and that. People know that they've been burnt by this Moms for Liberty supposed parents' rights movement. They've been lied to, they've been misled. And so they won't be as reticent to get involved in something else. This was their shot. Moms for Liberty was their major shot at this, and they are starting to fail. And we've had a little finger in that. We've been very active, and other groups across the country have been very active in pushing back against them. And what we do at Stop Moms is just connect the spokes on the wheel so that those groups now have kind of this umbrella of sharing of information. So, for example, today I had a school board candidate I think she was actually in New York, was having discussion with one from Texas, and they were sharing strategies. That's the strength of Stop Moms is that we are connecting people that are on the right side of things, and we're not a structure that anyone planned for. We are just truly grassroots, and this is how you push back, is you get people talking to each other. And the majority of the country is supportive of teachers, is supportive of reading in all levels, and are supportive of public schooling because they see the picture without public schooling. Can there be options? Can there be improvements? Absolutely. As long as those options are not discriminatory, like we've, talked on earlier. I can't support a system that will not accept a student because they happen to need a little bit more expensive, teaching tools or support pieces in the classroom, classroom aids or whatever. I can't support a system that is not willing to provide that. And the public school system does provide that. Are there flaws? Absolutely. But I can't support a system that would just eliminate the possibility by saying, hey, we don't accept you, because that is
You're too
fundamentally
expensive.
not American.
Yeah, you're too expensive.
Yep.
267-227-9189, we have about, oh goodness, 35-ish minutes left in the program. We take you right up till 9. The Villain's View comes up immediately after us. 267-227-9189. What sort of buzzwords, titles, group names, what are these new branding names that we should be looking out for? If it's not Moms for Liberty, what is it?
Yep. They're still using the phrase parent rights. And I contend that parents have never lost their rights. Some didn't know about their rights, and some didn't choose to exercise their rights. So that's a whole nother can of worms. If you want to have parent rights, you have to parent and you have to exercise those rights. So, like I said, that could be a whole nother show. And the buzzwords are typically the back to basics, the, hold people accountable. That whole approach seems to be a common thread in all of this. They're fighting to save America. They're fighting to save democracy, when in fact, they're not working towards democracy, because democracy includes all of us. And that's not the goal of most of these, either small groups or larger groups that are cropping up. But they'll do back to basics. They'll say lots of things like, you know, we need to have choice. Okay, who's the we in that? Do you mean this little isolated group of those that can actually afford to have choice? Or do you mean that everyone should have choice? Because fundamentally, I could get behind if everyone has a choice. That doesn't mean it has to be privatized, but you need to have that level playing field on the issue of choice if you're going to move forward for all citizens. And it's those kinds of things. They're going to talk still about, anti-CRT, anti social emotional learning,
CRT still a
CL.
thing? I haven't heard
It is.
CRT in a while.
Well, CRT, they've morphed into, they're against diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI. And they've lumped the two together, even
Oh,
though they're totally separate, you know, things that we need to discuss. Again, a whole nother show. We just did a podcast that will be available on our Facebook moving forward on CRT and this misrepresentation that was all done deliberately by one man that said, I'm going to make a boogeyman, and it will be used in this whole campaign to privatize education. So, I mean, it's kind of like that old saying, we got the receipts on that one. We know exactly why it became this big boogeyman, and unjustly so. There's no one in the country that is sitting down and teaching kindergarten students to hate being white or to hate being American. All that's happening is we have to look at our history, and we have to do so truthfully. And CRT is a law school curriculum. It's not something that's being implemented in lower education or even in secondary education. So that's a false premise. So then a lot of it is being touted as anti-LGBTQ plus community information, and the trans people are coming to get your daughters, and that kind of rhetoric that they're putting out
sneaking
there.
into your kid's bathroom.
Yes, yes, sneaking into the bathroom and doing X, Y, and Z to your daughters, and it's ironic to me because that was all the same rhetoric when Black people started being integrated into our schools.
There you go.
Watch out, they're coming to get your children, your women. I mean, it's just it's not new rhetoric, it's just a different focus right now. And so they are the marginalized group of the moment. And a lot of that is based on religious belief that they have been taught or indoctrinated into having an anti-inclusion approach to life. And that's fine. They can hold those opinions, but they cannot have those opinions applied to a public setting, because anyone from the LGBTQ plus community is in that public setting. And yes, they do have rights, even if people don't seem to think that they are due those rights because they're, lesser than. That needs to stop, because if we don't stop it, then who's the next group that's going to be the out group?
Reverend Niemöller's poem, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They came for the communists,
yep,
and I
they
wasn't
came
a
for the
communist.
communists.
They came for the
Yep,
trade unionists, and I wasn't a trade unionist. Came for the
absolutely.
Catholics, and I wasn't a Catholic, and on and on and on.
Mhm.
Let me ask a little bit of a phone is open, folks. We got about a half hour left. 267-227-9189. It's right on your screen. It's in Georgia Square. It's in my square. 267-227-9189. Let me ask you a little bit of a devil's advocate question. I think it's quite possible that in one of your previous visits that I did ask you this, but I do want to revisit it because the Bethlehem area school district right next door to us, the city of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, it's the 8th largest municipality in Pennsylvania. It is roughly 80,000 folks live there. They actually operate several different charters.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that among the gray areas of this discussion is all charters bad, or
Right.
not that. It's
Right.
who's running them and the
type of charter.
the reasons why they're running.
Right.
Are they running them to make money, or are they running them to educate kids? I have only really discovered, I think, in the last few years that I'm a terrible reader.
Okay.
It's just a very difficult thing for me to do, is to read text.
Hmm.
Bounce all over the page. I can't focus on it. It just takes me a very long time to read things. But I like to listen to things. I like to
Mhm.
watch documentaries. Kristen is the master of Netflix. She finds all sorts of things in all these different apps. And oh, here's a cute movie, and this looks fun. And how about this? And like, I would rather watch the documentary on, the type of pesticide they put on broccoli, even though I don't eat it. That's for me. And it would seem to me that these charters do address what the science and the studies have shown us are the new, or not new, the different ways that we've now learned about that people learn. People are visual learners. Some people are book learners. Some people need that human being at the front of the class stepping them through different things. Some people, you can just throw them a pamphlet and send them off into the corner and they'll absorb all of it. Other
Mhm.
people need a computer. Other folks need audio stimulation. They need that we learn in different ways. So when it comes to charters, it seems to me that there are charters that do address the different ways that kids can learn, and that makes it more I hate to use the business term of it, but a little more efficient, that they can learn better. That the charter approach in this particular building, in this particular group of kids, deals with more audio, visual, field learning, going outside and actually looking at flowers instead of looking at pictures of flowers.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So within the argument and within the efforts that Stop Moms has made to save um to save public education, this is not an all charters bad.
Correct.
It's a who's running them.
Right. And it's the
And the
same thing as all homeschool is not bad.
right. And the reason for
Same
which they're
premise.
running.
Yeah. Well, there are different kinds of charters, and I was actually involved in a public charter school in the opening of a local school that was exactly as you stated, designed to meet a specific need and, to have those kids thrive. I was then not involved in it, but helped in the development. So I know exactly what you're talking about, that there is a place for those types of charter schools under the umbrella of offerings. However, those charter schools cannot be allowed to go kind of off the script of what is expected of a public school setting. Ours was a public charter school under the umbrella of our public school system. So we had to follow all the same requirements, unfortunately do all the testing that was, also in the public school system. And I think that is one of the solutions, that you can offer choice as long as the choice is not discriminatory. And as long as the choice does have a mission to then, develop a plan and an approach that then can be taken back to a district and help to design or help to, I don't know the word I'm thinking of, but it will like inform what is done in the public school system. If they do, they have the freedom to, do what they're doing at a charter school, it can then be taken back for the positive in a public school setting. What's happening across the country is, yes, all charters are lumped together. And I wish people would not do that because they are not to be lumped together. And they typically say, well, all charters take away the money from a public school setting. In essence, that's kind of true. But the other piece of that is that they also take away the onus and the expense of the student. When they take the per pupil amount, they're
Right.
pulling student out of the expenses of the public school system too. So that can be debated back and forth a little bit too. But what we have seen and why charters have gotten this bad name are some pretty awful things. When you overnight open in a strip mall and you promise the moon, and then in 2 or 3 weeks that school closes down, and those poor kids have lost 2 or 3 weeks of instruction, and they're forced back into their, original schools, That is what is bad for students. And that kind of thing cannot be allowed under this whole, oh, let's just let it be a free for all. No, it shouldn't be. Those schools should be regulated and they should be required to have a lot of the same requirements. Where you can have freedom is to design your school day. You don't have to run this, certain amount of minutes for this subject or certain amount. It should be dependent on what the student needs. You might have a group one year that flies at math and they can just go and do the worksheets once a week and they'll be on target, right, for any goals in mathematics. Whereas that same group is struggling in reading. So as an educator, a professional, I should be able to design that school day to meet the needs within my classroom, not what some disconnected, rule maker in our case, Tallahassee, but wherever your state capitals are, is telling me is the proper way to educate children. Because oftentimes, maybe 9 times out of 10, they're wrong. And you have legislators that have no idea what's going on in education, making legislation that they think is for improvement. Well, you know what? Let's ask the teachers and see what they say about what legislation should pass. Even DeSantis, it's coming back to haunt him because he pushed all of this book banning, book banning, book banning, and he got all of these people inflamed because he's the big boss and he says, yes, this is terrible. This is going on in our schools. And now he has seen the animal or the beast that he has created, that people that have no kids in the school, are not even from a school district, are going in and they're saying, okay, I want these 70 books removed. And it has happened in places. So he's even backtracking a little bit on some of the requirements if people are doing book objections. So even this guy who's really led the charge on, bad public schools is having to backtrack a little bit. And I think we'll see more and more of that. One of the leaders of Moms for Liberty was being put forth to become part of the ethics commission in the state of Florida, which is pretty ironic because I know her personally, but I won't get into that. And she was not accepted by the Senate. Now, DeSantis is still going to push her, and he's probably going to put her in place. But that was a strong statement that the Republican Senate did not back DeSantis. That's really huge. And so, we see this little kind of rays of sunlight. Yeah, it is refreshing. It's not a total win ever. But we see maybe a crack in the foundation that, was supposedly being built here. And so getting back to the charter component of this, there absolutely are different kinds of charter schools. And charter schools as an entity are not necessarily the enemy. They could be part of the solution. Oh, go try it out there in the charter school. And if that works, that's what we'll do over here in the public school that is more regulated, if that makes any sense. So, it can be kind of laboratory schools would be a great way to look at it. And so, yes, that is definitely something that I think is very misunderstood across the country. I don't think it's a black and white issue. I think there are a lot of gray issues when it comes to the concept of charter schools. But the overall, I guess our position is, if someone's going to present and not deliver, then no, we wouldn't accept or support that kind of a movement. If schools open and they are discriminatory, no, we would never support something in that vein. But if you can come up with some kind of a structure that would be all inclusive and actually working on the betterment for students, then there is a possibility for charters to be part of the solution, but not the way that they're being allowed to do. When we have our Secretary of Education in the state of Florida, whose wife runs charter schools, pushing through charter schools left and right, there's something wrong there. When he's sitting as the person to make decisions that impact the entire public education system in the state of Florida, he has a vested interest in privatization. So there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Randall.
And there's a senator, I think he's a senator, I think it's Donaldson, I think that's his name, in Florida. And his wife is heavy duty, Moms for Liberty, privatization, let's do charter schools, so we have to look at the players that are also involved. And charter school could be a good thing, but right now it's not, because that's the typical of what's happening.
Randall, you've been very patient. Go ahead, my friend.
Yes. First, Elizabeth, thank you for coming back a third time.
Hi, Randall.
Another reflection for me. Yeah, talking about charter schools. I'm going to back up for a second. I grew up with a younger sister, and she's deceased many, many years ago now. But hers was intellectual IQ, and when we grew up in the '60s, and she was in high school in the early '70s when I was in college. Pennsylvania funded 100% the cost of special needs education here in the state of Pennsylvania. And starting under Republican Governor Ridge, with the Republican majorities in the House and State Senate here, they reduced that funding to 50%. And then not 2 years after that, they reduced it to 100%. And they threw all the costs. And special needs, 9 times out of 10, it's double the cost of educating someone with special needs than a quote normal child, unquote. And that's all been pushed decades ago now directly on public school systems here in Pennsylvania. And you made your point about charter schools. Well, I'm as against charter schools as I'm against private for-profit schools, as I'm against parochial religious schools. Why? Because they all discriminate against special needs. They don't want to have to, well, our budget says it's $12,000 a year for a student. I'm not going to spend $20,000 or more on the special needs student. No, we're not going to take them. So I disagree with you. Charter schools, in some ways, and PA, charter schools get their recognition and funding from your local school system.
Mm-hmm.
They discriminate against all special needs students, at least here in PA. And I'm just disagreeing with you.
Well, I don't think we're disagreeing actually at all. We said that we mentioned that earlier. It's the charters that are set up by the school districts, run and operated by the school districts. Again, Bethlehem has I think 3 different ones that I'm aware of. If I'm right, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I have that correct. They're operated by the districts themselves. So the same accountability, the same licensing for teaching, the same money that's going into the pot for the quote unquote standard public school is being shared into the charters. It's the private for-profit charters. And I think what is really the scam is these quote unquote cyber charters, where they have no brick and mortar. They can have one teacher for ad infinitum number of students because they're all online anyway. That I think is the real scam. And we didn't even get to that tonight, but
yeah.
So I'm not sure. I hear you, man, and I think you're 1,000% correct. It's the private for-profit charters that they're receiving. We'll use Liz's $8,000 in Florida. They're getting $8,000 per head per student, but only spending $4,000 and putting the other $4,000 in their pockets. And even if that is technically by the letter of the law illegal in Pennsylvania, they are also not required to spend every dollar of the student per head fee. So if a private for-profit charter is operating in somewhere in Chester County or Delaware, sorry, you're in Delaware County, and they're getting $10,000 per student per head and only spending technically they can't put that money in their pocket, but if they just happen to wink, 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 not spend the $10,000, then they do put the rest of it in their pocket. And that's where the profit part comes in, because they're not
Right.
required to spend the money. They're getting money, but they're not being held to account to spend it. And that's where the when the profit part of it comes in. So I'm not sure we're actually disagreeing. I think I happen to agree with you. I think that charter schools can fill in a very necessary component for kids that learn differently. I'm 55. I'm just figuring out that I learn differently.
Mhm.
I can only imagine what I would have done, especially college. Especially college. I was an abject failure at college. I don't think it was socially or emotionally or maturely prepared for it. And I think it's actually, and that actually might be a topic for a different day as well. Liz, I think the public schools do an abject poor job at preparing students for college, and not the academic parts of it. To be honest with you, it's the social parts of it. We're going to take these kids who've never lived on their own before in their lives, and we're going to thrust them onto these campuses and just have them figure it out. It's a lot to take in, and I was a complete failure at it, to be honest. I mean, I passed my college classes, but the social growing up, get out of the house part, well, I
Yep.
was nowhere near ready for that. But anyway, Randall, I think we actually kind of agree on that. I think there is a place for charters. I think there's actually quite a very important role for them. I just want them
Well,
run by the school districts, and I don't want them there for profit. I think that's where the dividing line might come in. So I think we
Mhm.
actually agree a lot
but
more.
I can, I'm here in Brookhaven in southeast Delaware County, the county to the east of Philadelphia County. I'm actually closer to Wilmington, Delaware. Travel and distance wise to Wilmington across the border than I am to Philadelphia County. But anyway, uh, I'm in. My wife and I are living in, let's just say, a middle of the road public school system here,
Mhm.
and the next school system over is Chester Upland School District, the poorest school district in the state of Pennsylvania. It is like predominantly people of color and socioeconomic, working class, for taxpayers, parents, and that school district, Chester Upland School District, God, they have like 10 charter schools. There is no oversight on them.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Half of them are for profit.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I have
Well,
a
who's at
daughter-
those charter schools would be the next question. Who is filling those charter schools? Because
daughter-
9
I
times
have
out
a
of 10,
daughter.
it's not your low socioeconomic status students.
Right.
No. I have a daughter that graduated magna cum laude in education. She took all her practice tests in college. She passed every one of them on first go round. She was certified in 8 subjects, from elementary ed up through social studies in high school. And she worked at one of those for-profit charter schools in Chester Upland School District area. And she lasted a year. And, when she started her classroom, she did a GoMe fund to buy notebooks, iPads, whatever, for her classroom students, because that was not provided by the charter.
Yeah.
And she obviously accomplished that and taught good for a year. And then she got a job at a public school system here in the eastern part of Delaware County, PA, right next to Philadelphia. That's incredibly diverse.
Mhm.
There's like 80 languages in that school district.
Wow.
And he was hired as a one of the elementary school librarians, because she has certification as a school librarian.
Mhm.
And she has her master's in ed. Her master's in ed, she got a 4 point for that.
Is
So
she under
she's
attack
got
as a
the
librarian?
well to be a teacher.
Mhm.
And she was there, I guess, for 3 years. Now she's in a school district across the border in Chester County that is money, and that's Westchester School District. And she's a librarian in one of the elementary schools there.
Mhm.
And she has not had to push back against this BS from Moms for Liberty of banning books. She went to her library and she found books from the 80s that were inappropriate, and she took them out herself.
Mhm.
But I just, anyway, your time's almost up. I'm going to let you go. But Elizabeth, thank you for coming on the show a third time. And
No, thank you, Randall,
thank
for calling in. I think the point you're making is really prime to this entire conversation, right? We should be doing better by way of educating kids. And it should not be discriminatory. It should not be exclusive. That's the mistake that's being made by the other side, is they think it's okay to have an exclusive approach to educating our citizenry. And the bulk of the citizens in the US don't agree with that. And so they are coming into more information and more awareness of this attack that's going on. Because without that oversight, as he was talking about, what are we going to have? A free for all with all these kids? What are they then going to do? Not even be vetting teachers? Who are we going to have in those classrooms? That's a scary thought. And just now, I think in Florida and several other states, they are approving the concept of having ministers come in to be counselors in our schools. That is so fundamentally wrong on so many levels.
It's
And
unconstitutional under the
it
establishment
is,
clause.
it is, but live in Florida for a while and you'll see how much the Constitution will get you. But it's
and that's
those kinds of
why
things that people don't like. Yeah, people don't like the shenanigans that are going on. And yes, is the public school system flawed? Absolutely. Is it worth saving? I think so.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Randall, real quick, please.
Point, please. You were talking earlier, you and Jeff earlier on the boogeyman people.
Yeah.
And when it was people of color, whether black, brown, polka dot, whatever, that was a big minority to be a boogeyman. So let's
Right.
pick the smallest minority in this whole country in public school age group.
Yep.
And that is the 1% trans. And that's why all these right wingers, Moms for Liberty, Governor DeSantis, except people in this country have made
And they will
trans
lose.
to
Yeah, they will lose.
stand because they are the ultimate minority of population.
That is true.
Thank you, my friend. We got to wrap
Good
up.
night.
I deeply appreciate it. And you take care of yourself and stay healthy down there, you and the entire family. I very much appreciate you. Thank you so much, as always, for being part of the program and listening and being loyal to the program. I mean, it means everything to us. We really appreciate it. We got 7 minutes left. Sorry, make that 6. I just watched the clock. Floor is yours for anything that we maybe didn't cover that you wanted to say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then
Sure.
we hand it off to the Villain's View in just under 6 minutes.
Sure. Just some contact information, I think, at this point. I can be reached at stopmomsforliberty@gmail.com for email. And then we have a link tree that has all of our, things in one name. But if you go to stopmomsforliberty.com, we have a website. that has our link tree and has all our links to the different social media. And I encourage people to join, even if you just join and read and you don't become particularly active. There is a whole lot of information being shared across this country. And that was the goal of Stop Moms for Liberty, is that we had this united pushback on the really often untrue and pretty salacious things that are going on. And so join us. There is no cost. We are not a 501c3. We are not an entity. You join by way of just doing a simple application, answer a couple questions. That's it. And become part of the movement, because we are truly a movement. And we have then subgroups in particular states. Pennsylvania's is one of the larger of our subgroups.
Mhm.
And Pennsylvania is so big that they now have drilled down and they have county level groups
Yes,
that
they
you
do.
can also find on our website. There's an interactive map, not necessarily for the county groups, but you can find your Pennsylvania group. And then from there, you can find your Pennsylvania chapters.
I'm a
And
member of 4 of them.
all right, all right.
I
Yeah,
have the
thanks for all those
Pennsylvania,
dues.
yeah, the Pennsylvania group.
Yep.
Well,
And different
they let me in
counties.
on Facebook. I should put it that way. They let me in on Facebook. They allow me to put the program on Facebook. The Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth wide group,
Yep.
Monroe County, Northampton County, Lehigh County.
Yep. Yep. We have, I think it's 22 subgroups with just in the state of Pennsylvania. Their organizing has been a bang up job, as is evidenced by things like Bucks County when they,
Yeah.
really had a revolution happen. I'm so proud of them. And we can win this, and it's all about uniting under the inclusive umbrella that says, oh, no, 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 no. You are not going to go after people. You're not going to go after a profession, and you're sure as heck not going to go after a public school system that is designed to serve us all. And I also always give that caveat of, does it need to improve? Yes, absolutely. But do we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater? I think we will all pay in the long run if that happens.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming back here.
Thank you, Jeff.
It has to mean that you think enough of our program that you would spend 3 nights with us, and that means a lot to me. We're clearly, we're not the biggest program on the planet, but we're getting somewhere. We're now reaching just a hair under 600,000 people around the globe. It was 1,200 when I started. So we're getting somewhere in 5
That's amazing.
and we did that in 5 years. So we're getting somewhere. And I'm thrilled that you're here as always. Even though we've never shared space in person, I do feel
Virtual space.
Yeah, it's always a virtual space. I do feel, oh yeah, and George is right. He mentions in the chat that we really are getting somewhere because we had death threats. So there's that.
Oh, welcome to my world.
Yeah, we really did qualify. But as I've said before, every time that you're here, when you have updates for us, please come visit. And it doesn't have to be, the super long extended one. I'm happy to have you here as long as you want to be here. But if you have a quick hitter, 5-10 minute thing that we need to know about, please know that you are always, always, always welcome here. And I'm just exceptionally grateful that you're willing to share what you're doing with me, with the audience, and that you're doing what you're doing, because this is
we're not just sharing Facebook stuff, right?
Yeah.
We now have a new initiative where we are supporting candidates across the country, the candidates on the right side of supporting public education. So we have a vehicle for that, for any listeners that might be involved in campaigns. Find out what we're doing. It's called Stop Moms for Liberty Project 2024, which is kind of, a spin on things. And it's a candidate support network. We found that there are many organizations that are willing to provide support, but no one was organizing them together. And so we're able to roll that out. We just did that in the last couple of weeks. So that's actually a resource that's available too.
That's about all the damage that we can do for 1 week for everybody at the TCP Media Group. That's Marquise, Whitney, Taekwon, Andrew, for everybody at hot101.net, the big boss, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, and everybody at hot101.net, for George and Lynn Dare, for Lehigh County Commissioner April Riddick, who's responsible for foisting this program on all of you. And of course, for Kristen, for Daisy the dog, and Guy the cat downstairs. That's about everything that we can do for 1 week. We will be with you again, probably not until May 19. That's a long time away, but we will return. Church stuff next week, Mother's Day on the 12th. Enjoy yourselves. Be well. You can always reach me offline. Check out our Facebook group, That Other Side of Information, the recorded version of the program, youtube.com/that other side of information. The Villain's View starts right now.
Good night. Thanks for having me.